speech. Like the rest of them, he seems to be obsessed with Nigel Farage, even though he isn't there. He said, when you see Nigel Farage measuring the curtains of Downing Street, remember, Labour have been behind in a series of polls around the world, and Labour went on to win. Progressives win when we follow the North Star of our beliefs. He started his speech today with a standing ovation for a true working class hero, the epitome of a working class mum, Angela Rayner. Remember Angela Rayner, who had to resign over a £40,000 unpaid stamp duty bill, a working class hero, the epitome of a working class mum. He then went on to his number one issue, of course, the top issue, the unstoppable issue with the working class of Britain, Palestine. Palestine was the first thing that David Lammy talked about. I honoured my commitment to recognise the state of Palestine when he was in opposition. He said, and this is a difference a Labour government makes. He kept saying that. This is a difference a Labour government makes. Another searing attack on Nigel Farage, who seems to be dominating proceedings very much, even though he's not even there. Now, coming up next, of course, is the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, who is to address the Labour Party conference in Liverpool, where she will outline plans to reduce migration numbers. Now, ahead of this, we can now cross the Labour Party conference in Liverpool and speak with GBNews' home political editor, Chris Hope. Chris, welcome to the show. You're there, you're on the ground, you've been covering it magnificently. It seems to me, Chris Hope, that the person who's dominating almost every speech isn't even there. That bogeyman is Nigel Farage.
Yes, Martin, we saw that last week, didn't we, with the little Lego figures of Donald Trump and Nigel Farage at the Lib Dem conference. More of the same, and you heard there from David Lammy talking about Nigel Farage, very rarely mentioning the Conservatives or Kevin Badenoch. They're not in the conversation, and that's a problem that party will face this time next week. But yeah, no question, Nigel Farage dominates. We'll hear more of that tomorrow from the Prime Minister. He's giving a speech around this time tomorrow on live on GB News. Do stay tuned for that. But with me now is Henry Tufnell. He's the Mid and South Pembrokeshire Labour MP. Henry, thank you for joining us.
No,
why is your party obsessed with Nigel Farage?
Well, I think the polls, right? People are looking at the polls and seeing that. But I think what we really need to focus on is delivery, right? Because people in my constituency in Mid and South Pembrokeshire want to see things improve, whether that's public services or the local economy, and that's going to take time, right? We've been delivering on workers' rights, the renters' rights bill, which we already have in Wales. So these things will come into force and will make a difference, particularly for young people in my constituency. And so that's really important. And that's what I'm focused on, is about delivery.
And can that happen? It seems a kind of jumble of messages from your party. We had last Thursday the idea of spending money in people's places from next April. The following day, digital ID cards. But is that about small boats or about a way to access government services? It's a bit higgledy-piggledy, isn't it?
Well, on the Pride and Praise, that was fantastic for Pembrokeshire. We had 1.5 million over 2 years. Going to invest. And
will that benefit people in Pembrokeshire on the ground? Yes or no?
Well, completely yes, because we're going to have local people be involved in deciding where that money gets spent.
Yeah.
And so that's about people being able to take ownership of where that money is being spent in their community. And look, digital ID, it's about making life simpler for people. You don't want to rummage around behind your sofa trying to find a utility bill. That's the key thing, making life simple for people and giving them those opportunities to renew their pride of place.
Talk earlier today from Rachel Reeves about headwinds, concerns about the budget, and also we heard earlier from Darren Jones saying that the manifesto is set now but could change after the OBR come back this week with new forecasts. Will you look to increase VAT, for example, in the budget?
I'm not going to start speculating on the budget. That's a matter for the Chancellor and the team at the Treasury. I'm not here to speculate about what the Chancellor may or may not do in the budget.
But the manifesto does last for 5 years, not just until the next report comes out from the OBR, for example.
Yeah, I'm not going to look, Chris. I'm not going to start speculating what it is because I don't know. I'm not involved in that process, and that's a matter for the Chancellor.
Andy Burnham is loomed large over this conference. He's gone away now. Will he be a better leader? You know who he is. He's the mayor of Manchester.
But isn't he sort of, it's all about a bit student politics here, isn't it, with Andy Burnham? Who's the leader, who isn't? It's not really about that. It's about delivery. It's about making people's lives better in the country. I think Andy Burnham is basically the definition of a career politician. I don't think he's done anything else. We're interested in, as a government.
It's a bit harsh. He wasn't a minister. You haven't been a minister yet.
Well, no, but that's not the point. I'm not portraying myself as something that I'm not. And I think the key thing, right, is about delivery. It's about the UK government. This is serious. This makes a real difference for people's lives. It's not about personality clashes. It's about that kind of thing. The Prime Minister was elected. He has a clear mandate to deliver the change that people want to see in their lives, and that's what we need to be.
So you wish you would shut up, frankly?
Well, it's just unhelpful. Right? He's obviously doing a good job in Manchester, but quite frankly, it's just unnecessary, isn't it?
Yeah, quite right. Big issue about patriotism. Here's a flag.
There we go. Do you want me to wave it?
Yeah, will you wave it, please, for GBNews? There we are. Look at that.
Do you need a Pembrokeshire flag, Chris?
Well, that's sort of flags. Why do the left have a problem with the flags hung from bridges and lampposts?
I'm the left, and I'm here waving a flag.
Do you have a union flag at home?
Yeah, we got loads of flags. We love it at home. We love raising the flags. Got the bunting up, like that bunting with the royal family, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's fantastic.
So it's not a right or left wing thing,
no,
is it?
I don't think so. It's great. Mike Tapp appears. He's got his goes on about patriotic values. He wears his Union Jack tie. I don't have my Union Jack tie on right now, but I'm sure I can call up Mike and ask for his. But no, I don't think there's any right or left thing.
But we've heard more increasingly about being patriotic is a Labour thing as much as it is Reform UK or the Tories. Yeah. That's different, isn't it? That's almost a change in our politics.
Well, I think it's important, right? We're proud in our country. We've got these values, the British values that we uphold, and we love. It's just who we are. It's our identity, right?
One final question about Reform UK. Is it racist, do you think, to try and deport those people here under indefinite leave to remain?
The indefinite leave to remain. I mean, it just shows that they're starting to be cracks in their policy. People people have come up to me since that announcement thing, so I'm on indefinite leave to remain. Are they going to start deporting me? I'm contributing to this.
Is
society.
It racist?
Well, I just think it's just starting to show that the reform, the apparatus, like that they're not serious about government.
But the R word, will you use that word about that policy?
Look, the indefinite leave to remain thing, it's not the right way to go about governing this country. Okay. It's unhelpful. It's causing huge amounts of concern in my constituency and across the country. People suddenly thinking, hey, hang on a second, what's going on for me? So that's a concern, and that's starting to show. Are they really? Can they really govern the country? Are they really serious? And I'm not. I think the answer coming back is no.
Wait and see.
Well,
3.5 years out from the election. Wait and see.
Yeah.
Henry Tufnell, thank you for joining us. Henry Tufnell there, who's the Mid and South Pembrokeshire Labour MP, Martin. And as you were saying, of course, Nigel Farage does loom large over this conference, as he did with Lib Dems, and he certainly will do next week. Henry, take your flag. He's got his flag. He's waving it next to me, taking my eye out.
Thank you, Chris. Live and direct from Liverpool. Superb. Speak to you later in the show, my friend. Now, let's continue the conversation now. I'm joined by the former Conservative Special Advisor, James Price. James, a pleasure to have your company. One man seems to be totally dominating the airwaves at this conference, as indeed he did at the Liberal Democrat conference. He's not there. His name is Nigel Farage. Of course, in every speech so far, he's been a key feature. David Lammy saying we must call out this policy for what it is. It is racist, not in our names, not in our times. Earlier on today, Rachel Reeves saying that Nigel Farage is racist. Farage is the biggest threat to our way of life. Well, he might be if you look at how many Labour MPs are going to lose their seats. And, of course, over the weekend, Keir Starmer saying the Reform Party policy is racist, with the inference that everybody who supports it is racist. They're obsessed with the man.
Look, I'm no genius, but if the number one issue affecting the country right now is immigration, way even above and beyond the cost of living and the economy and the NHS, if that is the number one issue that more and more people are turning themselves on to worrying about as we have more and more and more fighting age men spreading out across the country, and horrible stories coming out, to the point where the NHS over the weekend said, actually, cousin marriage is good because it might be good for the economy to keep all that wealth inside your first cousin marriage, and all these other horrendous stories that we're seeing as a result of mass migration. And you're the government, and you're getting an absolute pounding in all of the polls. I'm not sure that all those people you need to win back, that calling them all names and calling them all racist if they believe that immigration is too high, is necessarily the best kind of vote-winning policy I could ever come up with. I'm not sure that's going to be a vote winner for them, mate.
And James Price, the astonishing thing about it is that Shabana Mahmood, of course, the Home Secretary, is due to give a speech, we believe, in around about 5 minutes' time. Live pictures on your screen now of another speaker as we anticipate the arrival of Shabana Mahmood. She's basically going to deliver a policy for the Labour Party which sounds ostensibly pretty identical to that of Nigel Farage.
No, absolutely extraordinary, isn't it? Is the Prime Minister or the Chancellor or David Lammy, are they going to call the Home Secretary racist for daring to suggest that people who come to this country and stay in this country shouldn't have criminal records, for example, or that they should be net contributors, or that they should, be decent characters in general? Is that going to be considered racist? No, look, this thing is absolutely insane. And I think the Labour Party is massively panicking because they've forgotten that they only won by default last year, and they are treading water. They've not got any kind of plan inside government. They haven't got closer to having a plan. They've already wasted a year in which all they've done is put up taxes, ruin the economy even more, ruin public services even more, and now they're just resorting to calling people names. And again, I'm no political genius, Martin, but if your big problem is an incredibly charismatic person called Nigel Farage, that you probably shouldn't go and use the big platform you've got at your conference to keep saying the man's name over and over and over again and saying he's going to do lots of horrible things. Oh, by the way, we're actually going to copy him. Again, doesn't seem like a big vote winner to little old me.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And wasn't it also telling there at the top of David Lammy's speech that he introduced Angela Rayner as a working class hero and got a round of applause? A working class hero had to resign over a 40 grand unpaid stamp duty bill.
Yeah, absolutely astonishing, isn't it? They're not sending their best in the Labour Party anymore. I think this is a real problem, and I think that's not limited just to their members of the cabinet, but that poor lad that Chris Hope was asking questions of just then in what seemed like maybe his first ever media interview. Yeah, just going, well, what really matters is delivery, as if that that hasn't just been come up with by ChatGPT or something. I don't know where they keep finding all these people to fill Labour seats and to wear the little red rosettes, but they haven't got any clue about what's happening in the world. And as they're going on and on and on about Palestine as if that's the most important issue in the world, they're not talking about future technologies. They're not actually coming up with any plans to fix the economy. They're not talking about the threat of China. They're not even talking about the Ukraine war. They're not talking about any of the substantive things that a state should be getting ready for the 21st century. Instead, they're just looking inwards. And then, as you say, David Lammy trying to rehabilitate a woman who, in Angela Rayner, I can't even get the sentence out, in Angela Rayner, who was caught with her hand in the till, borrowing her son's trust money that she got when they sued the NHS, which Labour is supposed to love, by the way, and trying to rehabilitate her as a working class hero. The whole thing smacks of a government that is on its last legs after a kind of long and painful decade in office, rather than it being, just over 12 months. The whole thing is pretty desperate at this point.
James Price, just for the benefit of those tuning in, viewers and listeners, we are waiting for Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, to give a highly anticipated speech in as far as we're expecting it to set out the route to smashing the gangs, the route to finally deporting people, the route to finally showing that the country is tough on immigration. And the leaks that we've seen, the advanced sightings of this, it ostensibly seems to be the Reform Party's policy without quite as many deportations. James Price, let's get back to something else that you mentioned there. I think it's exactly right. There was a very interesting essay in the Telegraph over the weekend about how the Labour Party has simply hemorrhaged working class voters over the years since Gordon Brown became Prime Minister, and particularly when Ed Miliband was a leader of the Labour Party. And there's no other issue that defines that more now than the obsession with Palestine. Something like 18% of working class voters even care about the issue in their top 10 issues. And yet it was the #1 policy there that David Lammy went to in his keynote speech at the Labour Party conference, and it just makes you wonder. The party that used to represent the working classes now seems to represent the student union.
Yeah, absolutely right. There was a great poll last week or the week before that confirmed everything we know. If you go to a posh private school, you're now more likely to support the Labour Party, funnily enough. And if you go to a state school or a grammar school, you're more likely to support the Reform Party or maybe the Conservatives. So that just shows how topsy-turvy all this sort of class nonsense is got to now. I don't think it matters much to people what class you're from. I think it only matters the content of your character and where you're going, unless, of course, you're a crusty old socialist at the Labour conference, and then you're still some weird Corbyn-era class warrior. But you're absolutely right, Martin. Why is it that the Labour Party is going on and on and on about Gaza? Is it because they care about all the suffering? Well, I'd like to think so, but there's huge amounts of suffering going on around the rest of the world. They don't seem to be talking up the plight of the Christians in Nigeria. They don't even seem to be talking about the plight in Yemen or in anywhere else. It only seems to be in this one cause celeb issue of Gaza and Palestine. And I wonder why that is. Is it perhaps that Jeremy Corbyn is forming this silly, ludicrous Your Party with all of the Gaza independent MPs who are going to take millions of Muslim votes away from the Labour Party? Or perhaps the Green Party, or that the Green Party's leader is some nutter who has said that he can make women's breasts larger through the power of hypnosis. The deputy leader of the Green Party, a nice man called Mohsin Ali, is someone who bullied the rabbi of Leeds University so badly, saying that he was a child murderer, that the rabbi and his family had to go into hiding, and he's still not apologised for that. So there's another outlet there in the form of the Green Party for Muslim voters in Britain to go to. All these people have been traditionally Labour voters, leaking away from the party, just as working class voters are leaving the party, just as middle class voters who feel pretty much that they've been hoodwinked by Labour in the last general election, and they're looking at a complete electoral collapse. I'd like to think that Labour do anything based on the national interest, but as we all know, and as Andy Burnham once said before he lost one of the many leadership contests that he's lost in his career, it's the party comes first, not the country.
And James Price, another name to conjure with there, somebody else who seems to be taking an inordinate amount of bandwidth in the thought process at the conference is that man, Andy Burnham. And the Labour Party just compares, it seems, anybody they don't like to Liz Truss, even one of their own.
The Andy Burnham thing really gets me, right? He's just typical of these people in the Labour Party. Go on and on, whoa, I'm such an outsider. By gum, look at me. When he was asked what his favourite biscuit was, he said gravy. And just absolutely ludicrous guy who, went to Cambridge, became a special advisor, became an MP, was going on about people wearing fancy clothes in an interview. And when they asked what his suit was, oh, actually, it's Hugo Boss, silly me. Couldn't be more of an insider. And actually, it's that young Labour MP you had on set, he's never even had a real job before. The idea that this bloke who's running a sort of large council in Manchester is the answer to the many, many problems that the Labour Party has caused, it's absolutely laughable. And you would have to have a heart of stone not to feel a bit for the Labour Party. But fortunately, I've got a block of obsidian in my chest, and therefore I will laugh at the Labour Party and their misfortunes all day long because of the damage they're causing to this great country of ours.
And nevertheless, James, there was a message from the Chancellor Rachel Reeves earlier on saying, have faith. Our party has overcome greater challenges than this. Until our patriotic cause is realised, a better Britain is within reach. And then David Lammy keen to point out a multitude of occasions in different countries around the world, in Norway, in Canada, in Australia, where the Labour parties were written off and yet came up on the inside rail to take victory. Isn't it astonishing that 4 years out from a general election, they're already talking like that Nigel Farage is in Downing Street, and the only way of stopping them is to vote Labour Party, and don't worry, we can do it. They're only 14 months in.
The stench of death is unfortunately pretty palpable, isn't it? And actually, the Chancellor, not like her to be wrong about things, all of the economic numbers, her disastrous budget, her CV where she lied about jobs that she's actually had, not like her to be wrong about things. But once again, I'm afraid I've got to take issue with what she said. If you look at the example in Australia, I think the Labour Party there was set to win the last two elections that it did. And if you look in Canada, the only reason that the Liberals won there was because Donald Trump started being, let's be honest, a little bit silly, talking about Canada as the 51st state, which galvanized a lot of support. And even then, the Tories in Canada actually won a huge number of seats. If they want to look finally for some international comparisons to see what they should be doing, I'd recommend they look over at the state of Denmark. And I think in Denmark, we've got a great example of there's a centre-left government in control there. And it's one of the few, I think maybe the only centre-left party in Europe, in the Western world, that has taken the issue of mass migration really seriously. It's the centre-left party in Denmark that have kicked out huge numbers of people, that have strengthened the borders, have ignored all the nonsense coming out of the EU and all of the rest of it. And as a result, there's no insurgent right party, there's no far right party, whatever on earth that means, in Denmark. Just a sensible, decent social democracy there. Now, that would be something that if the Labour Party was serious at, and they looked at that, then they might actually start making some headway. And it was, one Keir Starmer who talked about Britain becoming an island of strangers. And I thought at that moment, maybe just maybe, he's starting to get that for 50 years, people have voted for the party that said that they would lower immigration only to see immigration go up every time, with the slight exception of those great Thatcher years. Maybe Starmer, maybe Reeves would start to get that all they've got to do is to substantially lower immigration. But no, Starmer comes along again and says, oh, actually, when I gave that Island of Strangers speech, I hadn't actually read it and I wasn't really paying attention. By the way, anyone who thinks what I said in that speech a few months ago, they're racist. And they're just going to keep falling back on that. And that's why they're so far behind in the polls.
And James Price, again, just to explain to viewers and listeners tuning into GB News this hour, we are presently waiting the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, to stand and deliver, as it were, her manifesto for change, for immigration, for deportations. Yeah, this is Shabana Mahmood, not Nigel Farage. And I'd like to just go over some of that detail now with you, if I could, James Price. We're hearing this will include stiff new tests to make sure you can speak commendable English. We're hearing you must have to volunteer for your local neighbourhood to prove you're invested in your locale. We're hearing you have to have a spotless criminal record to remain in Britain. Now, James Price, this sounds great, but the reality is we can't at the moment deport grooming gang rapists. We can't at the moment deport drug dealers if they don't like chicken nuggets. Is any of this well-sounding and well-meaning stuff actually going to deliver when reality bites?
I'd forgotten about the chicken nugget story. My God, absolutely unbelievable. This was alongside those same stories that they couldn't be deported because your child didn't like chicken nuggets, or there was the woman whose Latvian partner doesn't like spicy food and therefore she couldn't be deported back to the Dominican Republic, or the bloke who couldn't be deported back to Iran despite being a criminal because he was selling sex toys, and they don't look very kindly on that in Iran. These are the silly stories about the deportations we've been unable to make. But there are, of course, a lot more serious ones where people who've committed the most heinous acts that I don't frankly feel like going into at this respectable time of day cannot be deported back to their home countries, not in spite of those crimes, but because of those crimes, because some of the crimes are so unspeakable that if they went back to their home countries, they'd be treated very harshly. And so instead, we get to keep them here in Blighty forever. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. And all the stuff that Shabana Mahmood's about to say, I mean, I hope that her boss, Keir Starmer, doesn't call her a racist for daring to suggest that you shouldn't have a criminal record if you want to come from abroad into this country. Very bigoted, of course, that. But I do hope that she actually understands that unless they deal with the deep-seated legal problems that we've discussed, the Human Rights Act, the ECHR, all of this kind of thicket of power of the rule of lawyers taking over from the rule of law, none of this stuff's going to work. She's going to be a massive failure, just like everybody else has been. Not just Labour, to be fair, but politicians of all colours going back a long, long way, red, blue, whatever, because it is that thicket of the civil service and the regulators and the quangos and the lawyers and the bad laws that have been put onto the domestic statute book that, as you say, Martin, have prevented us from sending these people back. And what was the story today? That the nephew of the Taliban commander is allowed to stay, and not only that, but to bring over huge numbers of his family, none of whom do speak English. And then what happens? So Shabana Mahmood comes out and says all of this stuff, and we go to deport them, and they say, hang on a minute, ECHR, now you're stuck paying for me and my several wives and several kids and all the rest of it forever and ever. And if you disagree with that, by the way, GB News viewers and listeners at home, if you disagree with the idea that we shouldn't want to have to take in the nephew of a Taliban commander and his massive family full of people that don't speak English, well, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, thinks you're a racist. How about that? Is that going to be a vote winner?
James, I want to dwell on that point if I can, because there's been a huge amount of conversation around this, and it's also worth pointing out, you're exactly right, that the Conservative government prior to the Labour Party for 14 years were sunk in many ways by the same issues. They couldn't deport people quick enough. The ECHR was barbed wire that prevented them. They couldn't stop the boats. You know, we've seen decades of failure, but I want to specifically focus on this racism word, because when Sir Keir Starmer said it about the policy at the weekend, a lot of people straight away thought, well, I support the policy, therefore are you calling me racist? People leapt in to defend the Prime Minister, saying, no. He wasn't calling the people who vote for reform racist, just the policy, just Nigel Farage. We thought it might go away, but the Labour Party has doubled and tripled down again today. All of their top brass have gone into bat and repeated the R word. Does the Labour Party think that this is going to work? It works in their room. There's a standing ovation about stamping out racism, a standing ovation of drawing a line between Windrush and Nigel Farage's deportation policy. But ever since the mention of the far right after Southport, and with every incarnation of mentioning racism, a part of me thinks, James Price, that the British public are just starting to switch off from that word now. It's having no impact.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Look, you and I have had a bit of fun chatting about this and how absolutely ludicrous it all is. But you make a really, really serious point that there are people in this country who are racist, not nearly as many as some say, and that I think that we could all decent people would agree that judging someone based on the skin pigmentation that they have is a ridiculous thing to do. And I think that at the same time, calling everybody racist has had a really chilling effect on the kind of difficult conversations that we should in Britain be having based around people's culture. And because you can't talk about people's culture and different cultures, and I would say inferior cultures, that it's probably turned more people onto going, oh, well, then I'm just going to start judging people on their skin color. And that is obviously wrong. It's counterproductive, even if you were just being a ruthless capitalist about it. If you as a business don't hire someone because of their skin color and your opponent does or your competitor does, then they're going to do better than you. But and people will make nice arguments about different cultural elements into this country, food and things like that. It always seems to be food, and that's all great. And we want nice French people making nice French food, and you want American tech bros, or in my case, American wives. My wife is an immigrant to this country from the United States. But we do need to have a serious conversation about the fact that when you have people from inferior cultures, and we've seen a lot of it recently, this horrible excrescence from Epping, who went up to children and said, I want to make a baby with you, who's now been charged and sentenced to prison. That's a cultural problem. And what else do you expect when you import all of these people over? But exactly as you say, Martin, if you start throwing around this R word as it is over and over and over and over again, it does lose its potency. It does lose its power. And I think that, hopefully not in Britain necessarily, but in general, I think that has a negative effect. And it's just, it's pretty similar to the story of the boy who cried wolf, really, isn't it?
Yeah, James Price, also, we should probably be a little bit careful, dare I say, by using phrases like inferior culture, because, of course, people will simply attack you for those phrases, even though you may well mean it. I want to talk, though, about the way that the electoral map is seeming to fall. And at the moment, all of the polling is saying the Labour Party are going through an absolute collapse of support. It's a long, long way to go until any general election, of course, but we're not that far away from by-elections, perhaps. We're not that far away from local elections. We're not that far away from national elections in Wales and in Scotland next May. Next May, only a heartbeat away politically, James Price. This, what we're watching on our screens now, the party conference, is seen as not the last opportunity, but perhaps for Sir Keir Starmer, some people are saying it might be the last opportunity to sell him as a leader, to sell his vision. And we're seeing Shabana Mahmood now waiting to speak up. Let's go straight over there and listen into the Home Secretary. And thank you, James Price.
Thank you, Conference. It is an honour to address you for the first time as a Labour Home Secretary. If I am honest, it is an honour I never expected, and it is one that would have been unthinkable to my parents when they first arrived here in the 1970s. But if this is a story of progress, it is a contested one. And I was reminded of that fact just days into this job. On the 13th of September, 150,000 people marched through London. They did so under the banner of a convicted criminal and a former BNP member. While not everyone was violent, some were. 26 police officers were injured as they tried to keep the peace. And while not everyone chanted racist slogans, some did. Clear that in their view of this country, I have no place. It would be easy to dismiss this as nothing but an angry minority, heirs to the skinheads and the Paki bashers of old. And make no mistake, some were. But to dismiss what happened that day would be to ignore something bigger, something broader that is happening across this country. The story of who we are is contested. I am a patriot, proudly so. Mine is the patriotism of Orwell, pride in a country that is forever changing, while also ineffably always the same. It is a love of this country as an open, tolerant, generous place. But that broad vision of who we are is increasingly disputed. Patriotism, a force for good, is turning into something smaller, something more like ethno-nationalism, which struggles to accept that someone who looks like me and has a faith like mine can truly be English or British. There are some who we will never be able to persuade. But there are others, a growing number, who are on a path from patriotism towards ethno-nationalism. And this can be stopped. But to do so, we have to understand why so many people feel this country is not working for them. Because the truth is, across this country, people feel like things are spinning out of control. And without control, we simply do not have the conditions in which our country can be open, tolerant, and generous. When people see small boats arriving on our shores, they see a country that has lost control. When they hear of widespread illegal working, undercutting British workers, they feel the system is rigged. And when they see crime unchecked on unsafe streets, they feel fearful. This was the inheritance that the Conservatives left behind for us. And their current irrelevance is the price that they have paid. So it now falls to us to rise to this challenge. If we do not, our vision of an open, tolerant, and generous country will wither. And where we fail, others will succeed. Working-class communities will turn away from us, the party that for over 100 years has been their party, and seek solace in the false promises of Farage. They will turn towards something smaller, something narrower, something less welcoming, and the division within this country will grow. So the challenge we now face is this: not just to win the next election, but to keep the country together and to fight for our belief in a greater Britain, not a littler England. That work begins at our borders, where we must restore order and control. We will always remain a country that gives refuge to those who are fleeing peril. But we can only be open to the world if we are able to determine who comes in and who must leave. And it is clear there is more work to be done. On my second day as Home Secretary, over 1,000 people arrived by small boat. But the deal with the French, agreed by my predecessor, Yvette Cooper, marked a historic step forward. Yvette, we all owe you our thanks. The first returns, small in number though growing, send a message. To those profiting from the trade in human beings, we will break your business model and we will ensure that your crimes do not pay. And to those considering a perilous small boat journey, the risk is not worth it. And your only route into this country should be a safe and legal one. The British public will accept those fleeing peril, but they will not do so if there is chaos at our border. Today, the boats continue to arrive, and so I will do whatever it takes to secure our borders. Cracking down on the criminal gangs behind the trade, discouraging those who are considering a small boat crossing, sending those home who have no right to be here, and ending the use of hotels, that totem of the Tory legacy that has done so much to divide our communities. In solving this crisis, you may not always like what I do. We will have to question some of the assumptions and legal constraints that have lasted for a generation and more. But unless we have control of our borders, and until we can decide who comes in and who must leave, we will never be the open, tolerant, and generous country that I know we all believe in. While small boats are the most visible sign of a loss of control, they are not the only one. This country has always welcomed migrants, like my parents, who came here in pursuit of a better life, who worked hard, contributed to this country, and in time became a part of it. But in recent years, under the last Conservative government, the scale and the speed of change, as well as the nature of it, has frayed trust and eroded public confidence. Between 2021 and 2024, we saw over 2.6 million more people enter this country than leave it. And this included widespread abuse of Boris Johnson's health and social care visa, which saw 710,000 people arrive here. Far too many have been able to enter this country and disappear into the black economy. A rank betrayal of the Tories' old promise that they would take back control. If we are to preserve our openness to migrants like my parents, then we need a system that is fair to those who are already here. That means cracking down on illegal working that undercuts British workers. It means ensuring hiring practices are fair, forcing companies to fund training for homegrown workers if they are hiring from abroad. Crucially, it also means setting rules that ensure contribution to this country is a condition of living here. Because I know that the British people welcome those who come here and contribute, but contribution is a condition of that welcome. For that reason, we will soon increase the time in which someone must have lived in this country to earn indefinite leave to remain from 5 years to 10. And we will be consulting on this change soon, and as part of that consultation, I will be proposing a series of new tests. such as being in work, making national insurance contributions, not taking a penny in benefits, learning English to a high standard, having no criminal record, and finally, that you have truly given back to your community, such as by volunteering your time to a local cause. Without meeting these conditions, I do not believe your ability to stay in this country should be automatic. Some will be able to earn an earlier settlement than 10 years based on their contribution, while others will be forced to wait longer if they are not contributing enough. In some cases, they will be barred from indefinite leave to remain entirely. The British people have always welcomed those who come here, who work hard and who give back. Time spent in this country alone is not enough. Just like my parents, you must earn the right to live in this country for good. If you do, I know this country will welcome you. Order at our borders, a fair migration system. These are necessary conditions for an open, tolerant, generous country. But they are not the only ones. Where a nation is fearful, it turns inwards. When we feel safe, we can look outwards. So safer streets make for stronger communities. And that's why we must focus policing on the issues that matter, like knife crime, which tears so many lives apart, and the scourge of violence against women and girls. In some areas, we are making real progress. The levels of violent crime in this country are a fraction of what they once were. But I know it does not feel like things are getting better in many communities across our country, where crimes like shoplifting and antisocial behaviour, which tear at the fabric of a local community, seem to be committed without consequence. So it is right that we focus on neighbourhood policing, with 3,000 more neighbourhood officers by 2026. We must reform policing to ensure that forces are able to focus their efforts on the crimes the public care about the most. And to rebuild confidence in our forces, we must prove the impact that good policing can have on a local area. This year, forces across the country led a summer of action, tackling street-level crime in 600 locations. This saw more visible police patrols, more undercover operations, more fines, more protective orders, and more arrests. On the back of that success, this year, we will launch a new winter of action. Forces across the country, in partnership with local businesses, will target shoplifters and antisocial behaviour during the busiest weeks for all retailers. Once again, we will reach hundreds of locations and tackle the offending that wreaks havoc on our high streets. I am a rare Home Secretary, perhaps the only one whose first job was behind the till in my parents' corner shop. I know there is nothing low-level about shoplifting. I know what it feels like to keep a cricket bat behind the counter just in case. And so I know, better than most, that when we get tough and tackle crime like this, we bring communities together. Safety is a precondition of the open, tolerant, generous country that we want to be. While that starts at our streets, it extends to the nation itself. Far from the public eye, threats against our country are constant, from those who scorn our values and who seek to divide us. I will, as a Labour Home Secretary, always put the security of this nation above all else. And I pay tribute to those whose work keeps us safe. I pay tribute to those whose work keeps us safe, but whose successes are often hidden from public view. I know what it feels like to be a Muslim in this country in the wake of the devastating terror attacks of 9/11 and 7/7. I know that we are a stronger and more united country when we tackle those who seek to destroy our way of life, no matter who they may be. Conference, I know we share a vision. It is of an open, tolerant, generous country. It is a patriotism that speaks but does not feel the need to shout. It is one that embraces those who trace their roots back in this country over 1,000 years, and also those who look like me. It is a patriotism that accepts that some things in this country will change, but that there is something essential that will always endure. I believe we are in a moment where a patriotism like this is at risk, turning instead towards a smaller, more divisive ethno-nationalism. Our challenge now is to fight for our vision of this country, and in doing so, to hold it together. That is what I will do as Home Secretary. With order at our borders, fair migration, safe streets, and a secure nation. Some may describe me in the coming months as a tough Home Secretary. Perhaps that is true. But let it never be forgotten that I will be a tough Labour Home Secretary. Fighting alongside you all for a vision of this country that is distinctly our own. Thank you, Conference.
Well, that was the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, delivering a much anticipated speech on the future of the Labour Party's immigration and it seems to be now increasingly deportation policies. She started that speech with something which took my breath away, if I'm frank. She referred to the 150,000, or although a lot of people believe it was more than that, who marched under the banner of a criminal, a former EDL member. She was talking, of course, about the Unite the Kingdom march a couple of weeks ago in London. She talked about how 26 police officers were injured. Didn't tell us who injured them or how that happened. And she said, while I accept that not everyone there chanted racist chants, some did. And she called those people, some of those people, she said, not all of them, but some of those people on that march were the heirs to the skinheads and the bashers of yesteryear, a phrase I can't use on television. It said to me, Shabana Mahmood said, that I am not valid. She went on to talk about how she wants to see the rise of a patriotism, but a patriotism that was not ethno-nationalism. She talks about that phrase a lot, a message of ethno-nationalism. There are some that will never be able, there are some of them we'll never be able to save, she said, but we may be able to save some patriots from ethno-nationalism. We've seen speech after speech now from Labour Party luminaires referring to racism, the racism of Nigel Farage, the racism of reform. Every single speaker has mentioned that. Shabana Mahmood standing up and declaring an immigration policy, which is tough, keeping people out of the country who have no right to be here, who have criminal records, who don't speak good English, who aren't working. Sounds a lot like the reform policy, right? But apparently the reform policy is racist and Shabana Mahmood's isn't. She said we have to understand people and their feeling of a lack of control, and nothing sums it up more than the small boats crisis on our coast. When people see small boats arriving, they see a country that is out of control, she said. And if only many people listening in would shout, please take back control. We need a system that is fair to those that are already here, she said. And again, sounding every inch like Nigel Farage. Your right to remain is not automatic. The British people have always been welcoming, but time spent here is not enough. You have to prove your worth. Again, I put it to you, sounds very much like the policy of Nigel Farage and indeed increasingly of the Conservative Party. When a nation is fearful, it looks inwards, she said. Knife crime, that's a scourge on our society. Violence against women. Violent crime is going down, she insisted, but often it doesn't feel like it. And she then said, as the daughter of a shopkeeper, there is nothing low level about shoplifting. I know what it feels like, she said, reminiscing of her childhood, what it feels like to keep a cricket bat behind the counter to keep shoplifters away. We want a greater Britain, Shabana Mahmood said, not a littler England. Again, seeming to intimate that those with very similar policies to the Labour parties are small-minded, little Englanders, perhaps racist, not worthy of standing under the Union flag that the Labour Party is now increasingly wrapping itself in. Look at that enormous Union flag behind the Labour Party stand there. Liz Kendall has now taken to the stage in Liverpool. She talks about how she knows what it feels like to be a Muslim post 9/11 or 7/7. She then said, we share a vision of an open, tolerant, inclusive Britain, a patriotism that accepts people like me, she said. We must prevent people turning towards a smaller ethno-nationalism. For the third time, she mentioned that phrase, an ethno-nationalism. It really is, I think, a huge moment in what we're seeing now as the increasing battle lines drawn between the Labour Party and what they are clearly painting out to be something toxic, hateful, reminiscent of the dark days of the Bother Boys when gangs wandered around Britain's streets, kicking people in simply because they look different. Is that really what Britain is? Is that really where we're at? If you listen to the Labour Party today, it paints a picture of Britain being teleported back to the 1970s or even further back. I mean, I don't see that anywhere. I don't see that anywhere I go. I sincerely don't. I've travelled the entire length and breadth of the nation. I just got back from Nottingham. I've been through Birmingham. I've been through Coventry. I spent time all over Britain. I don't see people getting kicked in for the colour of their skin. Now, it's not to say it doesn't happen. It's not to say we don't have racists. Everybody has racists. And by the way, it's not just racists who happen to be white. Many people are starting to think we have racists against white people. But we are hearing a vision of Britain from the Labour Party today, which the Labour Party seem to be insisting is divided on skin colour, divided on race, divided in ways that can never be turned around unless we embrace a modern patriotic vision as shared by the Labour Party. And I wonder this out loud. I wonder if this is helping. I wonder if this is helping to smooth things over and calm down the national conversation that we've seen since the Southport triple murders when everyone was called far right. Is this helping? Or is calling everyone you disagree with racist not particularly helpful? So much to talk about. So much to think about. Let's get straight now to that conference and join GBNews' political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, welcome to the show. I've got to say, listening into Shabana Mahmood's speech there, I was taken aback by how she was, I think, painting a picture of a Britain descending into some skinhead, infested, racist, ethno-nationalist hellhole. Seriously?
Well, that's what she warned about, didn't she? She said a nation turning inward into ethno-nationalism. She said that when people feel threatened, they turn in on themselves. But, you know, she talked very personally. She's obviously from an ethnic minority background. Her family had a shop. She spoke about shoplifting, and she said, you know, I know there's nothing low level about it. My family had to keep a cricket bat in the corner just in case. She's sending the message that she understands that people feel that things are not working for them, that people feel that crime is rife, that they're not safe on the streets, that things are broken and not working. She talked about borders. She paid tribute to Yvette Cooper, the previous Home Secretary, with this France supposed one in, one out deal. Of course, we've had hundreds and hundreds of it, and only a very few out. But she said that this was a historic and a big moment. They clearly think that they can scale it up. She said that they will smash the model of the gangs, but of course we've been hearing about them smashing the gangs. Well, since they were elected, we swapped the Stop the Boats slogan for the Smash the Gangs slogan, and we've seen, haven't we, in the last few days, bigger boats, mega boats that hold up to 125 people. So at the moment the government is doing anything but smashing the gangs. But look, she had, I think, quite a sort of tough message. She said, I'm going to do things that may not please a lot of you in the hall. I will be a tough Home Secretary. She did say we have to get control of our borders. It feels like they're a very long way off that. But she clearly feels, as a person of mixed race, that there are many people in the country that think that she and others who look like her have got no place here. And obviously that's something that she feels very, very strongly about. She said that most Brits have what she called a quiet patriotism, and she talked about the sort of cracking down on legal migration, making it harder for people to stay, saying, you know, if you contribute and earn the right to stay, it's something that you have to earn, something you're not entitled to, then you will be welcomed. But that things as they stand have got really quite out of control.
Okay, thank you very much there, Catherine Forster. I'm still kind of reading from that speech. I have to be frank, I think we're going to be picking over what Shabana Mahmood said there for a long time to come. They're absolutely going wild on GBNews.com. You all say about what was just said, that the rise of ethno-nationalism. A lot of people are saying that simply don't recognise that description of Britain, but nevertheless, it was said there at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool. Catherine Forster, thank you very much for joining us. We're back to you, no doubt, throughout the rest of the show. Now, plenty more reaction to come to the Home Secretary's astonishing announcements throughout the rest of the show. But in any other huge news today, very shortly, the US President Donald Trump will welcome the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to the White House for talks on ending the conflict in Gaza. Live pictures there of that White House door, that world-famous door now, that has accepted a plethora of world leaders, all of them anticipating their fate. This is expected to be a much more friendly coming together. Of course, Benjamin Netanyahu delivering that blistering speech at the United Nations last week, shortly after Donald Trump gave his own speech. And we'll get crossing live there to the White House for that hugely anticipated arrival and, of course, the press conference later in the show. Let's speak now with the editor-at-large of Tribune magazine, Carl Hansen. Carl, welcome to the show. Let's talk about the meeting of Netanyahu and Donald Trump. Expected, of course, a huge feature will be the war in Gaza. Will it or won't it be ending anytime soon?
Well, I think the correct position is maybe a sceptical optimism. Trump and people around him have been making sounds like a deal is close. And nothing is more important than ending the genocide. But having said all of that, we've been here before. Shortly after Trump was first elected, he brokered a ceasefire, which Israel, after I think about 10 days, broke and restarted the conflict. And there was no consequences for that, no sanctions, no halt on arms sales. So if there is to be a deal, then Trump needs to be brave enough to bring the Israelis to heel and threaten meaningful sanctions and consequences if they break that deal.
I mean, Donald Trump has repeatedly said that the way to end all of this is to release all of the hostages now. Not 2, not 4, not a handful, all of them. And Hamas won't do that.
Well, Benjamin Netanyahu has made it clear publicly, repeatedly, that releasing all of the hostages won't halt the war, that Israel's going to keep on fighting. So Donald Trump may say that, but it's delusional, and the Israeli Prime Minister regularly goes out in public and flatly contradicts that statement. The war won't end until Israel is threatened with meaningful consequences unless it halts the genocide.
Well, Israel has repeatedly denied it's a genocide, and Benjamin Netanyahu at the United Nations last week was in no mood to back down. He was saying, we've hammered the Houthis, we crushed the bulk of Hamas's terror machine, we crippled Hezbollah, we've taken out most of its leaders and much of its weapons arsenal, we've destroyed Assad's armaments in Syria, we deterred Iran's Shiite militias in Iraq, and most importantly, above everything else, we've devastated Iran's atomic weapons. He's not in the mood to back down now. He seems like every breath the leader to get the job done.
I think that's correct. And Israel for 70 years has wanted to expel and get rid of the Palestinians. And what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in the West Bank with the expansion of the settlements is Israel pursuing this project. So I think you're entirely correct. Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli public at large isn't interested in stopping now. And that's why pressure needs to come from outside. Israel internally isn't going to change its behavior unless the US, the UK, and other countries in the world put pressure on it, which means economic sanctions, ending arms sales, and making Israel more diplomatically isolated.
Why should the punishment go towards Israel? And many believe, for example, that the recognition of the state of Palestine has rewarded Hamas. It's rewarded the pogrom. It's rewarded the worst atrocity on the Jewish population since the Holocaust. It all seems to me, to people like yourself, expect Israel to cave in and give concessions when Hamas thus far has given none.
I don't think that if you look at Gaza, the mass devastation, likely hundreds of thousands dead, they could call that a reward for anything. It's the greatest atrocity of the modern era. But I think the important point to stress that when it comes to recognition or putting sanctions on Israel and halting arms sales is that these are all moves that need to happen to create a political process to achieve peace. The alternative to that is the genocide continuing, for Hamas attacks to continue, and this whole cycle of violence to continue in perpetuity. Applying pressure to Israel, punishing Israel for its crimes is what's needed if you want to replace war and genocide and fighting with politics and peace.
Thank you very much, joins us, the editor-at-large of the Tribune magazine, Carl Hansen. Thanks for your time on GB News today. Now, just a quick reminder to viewers tuning in, live pictures on your screen there of the White House. We are anticipating the Prime Minister of Israel, the Premier, beg your pardon, to show up imminently. That is Benjamin Netanyahu. Normal protocol is we see the flags coming out first, so we're expecting to see the stars and stripes and the Israeli flag out, and the US Marines, of course, stand by. And then Donald Trump steps out, and then the beast hoves into view, and a foreign dignitary comes out. So it seems there's some short while of that happening yet. But of course, we'll carry on bringing you live pictures and that moment as it happens. And I'm delighted to say I'm now joined in the studio by the Foreign Affairs analyst, James Marlowe. James, welcome to the studio. So ahead of this hugely anticipated visit of Netanyahu, I mean, every leader that goes through those doors is hugely anticipated because you never know what's going to happen. We might see in the next couple of hours that the war in Gaza is solved, is ending, or is being escalated. We don't know what's going to happen. But I was just explaining there to my previous guest, Benjamin Netanyahu seeming 100% in the mood to press on and get this job done.
Martin, if I may just quickly reply back to what your guest said as well. I think he said hundreds of thousands dead already in Gaza. By Hamas figures, they say 65,000. So I don't know where people get hundreds of thousands. 65 of which the IDF say they've got about 38,000 fighters, not just from Hamas, but Islamic Jihad, the Palestinian resistance movement, which is the third largest terror group, the Popular Front and the Mujahideen and many other terror groups who are fighting with Hamas, being led by Hamas. So there is civilians who have been killed, and it is tough in Gaza, and it's been going on for 2 years. But you would think if it was a genocide, a war which has been taking place for 2 years in an enclave that is locked in other words, Egypt has sealed up the borders and has put 30,000 troops on its border just to make sure that no Palestinian will leave Gaza and come into Egypt for a period of time. For those people who say, no, if they go into northern Sinai, which is part of Egypt, they will never get back in again. Well, that's not necessarily true. You could easily sign an international document. You can get the US to signature at the bottom to say, after 6 months, if those who want to go back to Gaza can easily go back into Gaza, so there shouldn't be a problem. Now to your question, with regard to what's going to take place when that card draws up in a very short time from now, I would say that you've got two friends who are looking forward to seeing each other again. According to some media reports, there are 21 points that have been put across. General media are actually saying, the general media reports are saying that the sides are very close. So let me just go to the tachlis. The tachlis is a word in Yiddish which means the meat and the bones. Yeah. So obviously, what they both want is that Hamas to go, certainly what the hostages released, that's 48 hostages, of which 20 are believed to be still alive. They have to come out, and you just mentioned not 3 today and 4 tomorrow, and then 1 the next day, and then 2 sometime next week, all of them to come out at the same time. And Hamas, if they wish, to have safe passage to leave the Gaza Strip.
And let's just look at some of those live pictures again on our screen there, James Marlowe. There are protests, as you'd anticipate, outside the perimeter of the White House, pro-Palestine protests. There's a relatively small amount of people there waving Palestinian flags, as you'd entirely expect, James Marlowe. But lest we forget, it's only 10 days until the second anniversary of October the 7th. And I wonder, people like my previous guests, when they talk about the worst atrocity committed in modern times, they seem to have a collective amnesia about October the 7th and what precipitated what's happened since. And I have guests on the show all the time who say they've seen, the full unedited version of what happened. They've seen some of the... And
myself as well. I've seen it.
I know you've seen that.
Yeah.
And
have you seen it?
I've seen what I would call a sort of 75% version, and I don't want to see any more. It absolutely still scars me to this day. It was just unbelievably barbaric and cruel, and we should never, ever forget what happened on October the 7th. 2 years ago, but these people seem to have forgotten.
Yeah, I'm not sure they even remembered, actually. I'm not sure they even knew about it, because if they're the ones on X and other social media platforms, they're the ones who say it never happened. There was no babies killed, there was no innocent people killed, it was just fighting against the IDF, or it was the IDF that really did it. That's what we see all the time. A lot of these people are in plain cuckoo land. They're just in denial. The reality is that atrocities took place. I forced myself to actually watch the beheadings in that, and people turned away, and I forced myself to watch it because that's what took place. And just last night, one of the more famous hostages who'd been released, Eli Sharabi, who lost his 2 daughters, who lost his brother, and he gave a full extended interview to the CBS this morning on Sunday, and I watched the whole thing. It was just so revealing as to the conditions that they were in, and he was just talking on a one-to-one basis about as if you would over a cup of coffee with a friend.
No humanity displayed towards him or any of the hostages ever?
No, not at all, not at all. And the amount of food that they got and the conditions that they were in and what was going through his mind, etc. And I would encourage your viewers to just search for Eli Sharabi on the CBS This Morning or Good Morning, which you can find on YouTube, which I watched it on YouTube, because it's very, very revealing. 46 minutes, it was well worth my time. And that reminds me of what took place 2 years ago. And again, in a few weeks' time, I'm expected to meet some of the families just down on the Gaza border again, in the villages and the towns and the kibbutzim, again, just to hear the stories again as to what took place. But these people who we see outside the White House were there, as I said, in cloud cuckoo land. They're just in denial, and they're the ones who are supporting what they call the legitimate resistance. In other words, they don't want a two-state solution. They don't want a 3 or 4. They want Israel gone, and they want the Jewish people inside of Israel today. And by the way, also the Arabs who've got Israeli citizenship inside of Israel, they want them gone.
OK, James Marlowe, thanks for joining us. Stick with us. Just to repeat, these are live pictures on your screens now there from the White House. There is a protest outside in anticipation of the arrival of the Israeli Premier Benjamin Netanyahu. Well, that's next with me, Martin Daubney, as he arrives at the White House. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back. Time is 4:27. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Let's cross now to the Labour Party conference live in Liverpool and speak with GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster. Catherine, I believe you have a guest for us. Over to you.
Yes, welcome back to Liverpool, where I'm joined by James Frith. He is the MP for Bury North since last summer. James, thank you very much for coming on the show today. Look, I don't think you could argue that Labour have had a pretty bumpy year and a bit in office. Then you came back in September. Angela Rayner, the Deputy PM, had to go. You've ended up with a massive reshuffle. But we've just heard from the new Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. What did you make of what she had to say? She said that she's going to be tough but fair.
Well, I think anyone that knows Shabana knows that that is very much her brand. It's her instinct. She is tough but fair. She's a straight shooter, and I think the Home Office is very safe in her hands. She's outlined a vision for our migration system, which is consistent with what the Chancellor talked about earlier, with what the welfare reforms are set to do, which is about contribution and people contributing to their communities, demonstrating their contribution through good work or volunteering or taking those opportunities that are provided them. And I think that is a positive framing for legal migration, which too often is being wrongly associated with the issue of illegal migration, which is obviously something else we need to tackle as well.
She said in the speech, she talked about the abuse of Boris Johnson's visas for care home workers in particular. Is the hope that obviously migration went through the roof under Boris Johnson, or they call it the Boris wave, sort of up to 1 million. The hope that extending, till you don't get indefinite leave to remain to 10 years, and that you've got to meet all these criteria, that will have a sort of dampening effect on the number of people that ultimately get to stay from that huge influx.
I don't think it's about dampening it. Clearly, the migration numbers that you're talking about with under Johnson and the disastrous period of office that the Tories left us to handle and to pick up, it's just yet another legacy issue that this Labour government is having to pick up and run with. I don't think it's about dampening it. I think it's about enhancing the qualification, so making the qualification period more robust, making sure that there is a clear intention for what we as a country expect from people living here and making their life here and setting up home here. And that's absolutely right. I don't think that's inconsistent with what your viewers would expect from their neighbour, let alone anybody who is coming here to live with families already settled here.
Sure. And on illegal migration, which of course people get very exercised about, seeing people coming across the channel. We've seen a boat at the weekend with I think 125 people on it. Shabana Mahmood says that this one in, one out deal, is a historic deal, but is it really? Because you've deported about 5 or 6 people, and we've had hundreds and hundreds coming in. Unless you can ramp that up and quickly, it's really going to have no effect, surely.
You're absolutely right. The ramping up and going at scale is absolutely the next challenge. But what the government has focused on initially is a proof of concept, a pilot that works. That pilot, the people that have been sent home that had no right to be here, that came here illegally, that pilot's been proven, and it is now about scalability. You're absolutely right. Nobody is revelling in the fact that these numbers continue to come over, but it's a Labour government not interested in the gimmicks of the past that left an open border policy pretty much under the Tories when they left office, to now grip that situation. And actually that also chimes with this theme of contribution, because it's not on that the people already living here, making their way, contributing, should tolerate or should have to tolerate people arriving here illegally. And that sense of fairness that is implicit in British life, in the values of our British life, our society, it's inconsistent with that.
And just finally, everybody that I've listened to speaking in that hall today and yesterday, everybody talks about Nigel Farage. You barely hear the Conservatives mentioned. Do you just consider them irrelevant? And also, don't you risk, David Lammy said earlier that, reform's policy to scrap indefinite leave to remain was racist. Don't you worry in that calling reform racist, you risk alienating a whole big swathe of voters who might be leaning towards them?
So I think there's a distinction to make here, that a policy can be racist without then associating immediately the entire party or movement, or indeed the people that support a particular party as that. And that's certainly not what David, I'm his PPS, and that's certainly not what David will mean in comments on that. But I do think it's right that we call out with muscular language, because that's the language that Reform are using to good effect. The same with the Conservatives in terms of their attacks to in opposition on this government. But that is to adopt a muscular language that calls out a policy that is racist as what it is. And I think we have an agreement, a historic, traditional sense of justice in this country, that if you are here and you are contributing and you are British, the rules do not change after the agreement has been made. And what the Reform Party are saying in this scrapping indefinite right to remain, you've only got to go down any high street and neighbours and community leaders and individuals and retailers or small business people, this is the fabric of Britain. This is Great Britain. And I think what we're seeing now is dividing lines open up between one party that wants to sort of play grievance Britain and one party that's leading Great Britain, or maybe even renewing Great Britain, because the legacy that we're picking up from the Conservatives in office, and now the threat, which is about identifying the likely threat at the next general election, the current state of the polls, is to recognise that what Reform is saying needs better scrutiny, and our job is in part to ensure that people are doing that scrutiny of any challenges to a Labour government. And what we've heard today, I think, is a really upbeat assessment, kicked off with our Chancellor, who gave a really good list of the achievements in office and compared that to the thousands of days out of office. And I think, from a Labour point of view, and what I'm sensing at conference, is it's about time we start to talk up those significant achievements and feel a bit prouder, a bit more passionate and a bit more persuasive to the change that a Labour government can make.
James Frith, thank you very much indeed for talking to us on GB News today. Back to you, Martin, in the studio.
Voice of Superb there, live from Liverpool. Cross back to you later on in the show. Now, coming up next, we'll have more reaction to Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu's meeting at the White House. Next, but first, here's your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. 4:30. The top story. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has unveiled tougher migration plans. The wait for indefinite leave to remain will double to 10 years, with stricter tests on English, criminal records and community contribution. She warned delegates they may not always like her decisions, but insisted strong borders keep Britain open, tolerant and generous. Meanwhile, the Chancellor's big Labour conference speech was interrupted by a pro-Palestinian heckler shouting about the mass starvation of Palestinians. Rachel Reeves, though, pressed on defending Labour's stance.
But we are now a party in government, not a party of protest.
In other news, Jaguar Land Rover says production will restart in the coming days after a crippling cyber attack. The car maker calls it a controlled and phased restart, warning there's still a lot more to do. Met police officers could soon be asked to declare if they're Freemasons. A new consultation will decide if the group should join the list of declarable associations, amid questions over its impact on investigations and promotions. And rail passengers in Yorkshire can now buy tickets with their phones simply being tracked. The new app checks you in at the station and uses GPS to log when you finish your journey. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you at 5.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are, online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine day for most of us with some sunny spells, but increasingly damp in the far northwest, most notably Western Scotland, where we do have a weather front brushing past, and this weather front will increasingly bring wet weather to the northwest of the UK during the next few days. But for the time being, it's light and patchy outbreaks of rain for the west of Scotland, but also northern parts of Scotland, and overnight Northern Ireland seeing some splashes of rain. Elsewhere, mostly dry, clear spells continuing for central, southern and eastern parts of the UK, and with light winds. Temperatures falling away, mid to high single figures generally, and a few mist and fog patches, just like Monday morning, across the south of England. But towards the north, where it's a windier start to the day, a lot of cloud cover for Scotland. Those outbreaks of rain continuing to push into Orkney and Shetland, also sporadic outbreaks of rain for much of Scotland, northwest England, Northern Ireland. So on and off rain, mostly light, not particularly impactful at this stage. Wales seeing some cloud, 1 or 2 light showers, but for much of England, away from the northwest, it's a bright start once those mist and fog patches have cleared. Plenty of sunny spells for a time through the south and southeast, although the cloud will build into the afternoon. So for many places, it is a rather cloudy day, and that cloud will be thickest across northwestern parts of the UK. Again, a keen breeze and those outbreaks of rain on and off. Warm enough, though, in the southeast, 20 Celsius, more like mid to high teens further northwest, although eastern Scotland seeing the potential for 18 or 19 Celsius. Then it's all change as we go into Tuesday night, a deterioration as heavier rain pushes into Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. That's the start of a very wet spell for Western Scotland in particular midweek. Elsewhere, drier but breezy.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. There is a significant collision on the M5 southbound exit slip at Junction 5. One lane remains closed with traffic expected to improve this evening. In Oxfordshire, a lane is blocked on the M40 northbound between junctions 10 and 11 due to an accident. Delays exist in Swindon on the A419 between the A420 and the A4259, where a broken down vehicle causes delays. The A27 westbound faces a lane closure due to a vehicle fire. And on the trains, expect disruptions between Luton and London St Pancras International on East Midlands Railway and through Gatwick Airport with Gatwick Express. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Debate time is 4:39. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, President Donald Trump has just welcomed the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to the White House for talks on ending the conflict in Gaza. He just arrived a short while ago. I believe we have some pictures coming up. There we are. That's the hugely anticipated meeting of the Premier of Israel and Donald Trump. Of course, top of the pops. The huge topic of conversation is the ongoing war in Gaza. Is it imminently about to end? Well, the mood music looks positive. Let's bring in my next guest here in Westminster. I'm joined by the Foreign Affairs analyst, James Marlowe. James, so I think a breaking news line there is Donald Trump has just said he's confident of reaching a deal. It's 2 years, we're 10 days away from the second anniversary, of course, of October the 7th of the Hamas terrorist pogrom. Are you confident that this could finally be reaching an endgame that may, well, at least solve the purposes of Israel and perhaps Donald Trump?
Well, look, the first thing to say is that if, from what most of the world appears to be calling for, and indeed the Labour Party are calling for, is that the war suddenly stops, well, that's no good because it will restart again in 6 months or a year's time. And Donald Trump seems to be one of the few leaders in the world who understands that, because as long as you have Hamas and the other Islamic groups who have threatened to completely destroy Israel, all they're going to do is regroup, retrain, rearm and re-attack again. And they've said that they're going to do it, and we believe that they're going to do that. So the only way to avoid that and have a real long-term peace is to get rid of the Islamists. And that is what is being discussed exactly as we speak right now in the White House, in the Oval Room, in the Oval Office. And I can only say that most Israelis, of course, they want the war to stop. I mean, Israel right now has lost, and these are the soldiers that have actually been named, I think it's 908 or 909 soldiers since this war has actually started. That includes in Lebanon and also in Syria. But that's a huge amount. It may not seem a lot for some European countries, but it's a huge amount for a tiny little country like Israel.
Now, of course, James Marlowe, we're seeing live pictures there on our screens of protests, pro-Palestinian protests and anti-Benjamin Netanyahu protests, and no doubt a lot of those people there would point to the fact they would call this a genocide. They would say that the Israelis have killed and murdered thousands and thousands of Gazans, including children and babies. But are you saying that some of that could be propaganda?
Yeah, well, I would think, I mean, if you listen to what these people, these type of people would say, it's only babies are being killed. There's no one else. There's no teenagers. There's no one with guns. There's no one who's connected with the Islamists or the resistance as such. It's only babies which is being killed. And I've put out on my Twitter account several times of how sometimes when the cameras pan out, you can see that there's microphones there, you can see that they're being told, and then they relax. Now, of course, I'm not suggesting that there's not terrible things which is taking place in Gaza. It's a war zone. It's been going on for 2 years, and many people have been asked to move. Excuse me. They've been asked to move several times, so we understand that. The reason why they've been asked to move several times is because Egypt will not open up the border. On the other side, I suspect, and we're not seeing that on the cameras, is probably some pro-Israeli with Israeli flags, but that's not being shown. Maybe they're coming on a little bit later just to show a little bit of support.
Okay.
Now, one of the... I was just going to add very, very quickly as well. Unfortunately, these Islamists, they actually have many, many wives. And their objective is to impregnate these many, many wives as many times as possible. By Palestinian figures, they say that 300 newborn babies are being born every single day. And the Palestinians have admitted that they've got 19 operational hospitals. So it's not quite as it seems. Now, if you say 300 a day, what's that? That's more than 2,000 a week. That is over... 2, 4, 6, 8,500 a month. You do the maths after 2 years. It's quite extraordinary. It's the first genocide that they've got more population than before the war started.
OK, James Marlowe, we do have a clip now because upon arriving at the White House, Donald Trump says he was very confident of peace in Gaza. Let's take a listen.
President Trump, are you confident, sir, there'll be peace in Gaza anytime soon? And the 21-point plan, is everyone on board?
You know, what's really interesting is you can see the strain on the Prime Minister's face over there. You can see the amount of pressure that he's under unfortunately, some of on the political left in his own in his own country, and also from the two right-wing parties, which is part of the coalition, that have said that if there's any talk whatsoever of a Palestinian state, and I don't think the president will go for anything like that at this point, because where is going to be the Palestinian state? There is, by the way, and he did suggest, there's a nice piece of land on the East Bank that is inside of Jordan, which is from the Dead Sea, going southwards. Apparently, it's uninhabited, and that could be a nice area. But you can see the strain, because obviously he wants to get the war finished. Netanyahu wants to get the war, but you cannot finish the war unless you get rid of all the remnants of Hamas.
OK, thank you very much, James Marlowe. Please stick with us. More analysis to what Shabana Mahmood said earlier on. The elephant in the room, the real racism in Britain, seems to be completely ignored, and that might be anti-Semitism. That's next. But for now, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here is the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
There's still plenty of fine and warm weather across most of the Mediterranean, but it's a different story across parts of Spain, and in particular parts of southeast Spain and the Balearic Islands, where we're going to see some particularly heavy and persistent rain through the day on Tuesday. Flooding is possible in places, and warnings are in place as well. Scattered showers across parts of Italy, the Balkans and Greece, but many places staying dry with some sunny spells. And through the next few days, it stays largely fine with a mixture of sunny spells and cloud, and temperatures around average.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
I do think it is the most beautiful
we've ever seen Princess Catherine look before. What a gown. That was the British designer that she chose, Philippa Lepley. And then she matched that fantastic couture gown with her favourite tiara, which is the Queen Mary Lover's Knot Tiara, which was commissioned for Queen Mary. That was the late Queen Elizabeth's grandmother in 1914. It just suits her so well. And with her having that incredible hair and such a beautiful face, and she has that supermodel figure which just can carry off. She could put a bin bag on and still look drop dead stunning. President Trump, he was just thrilled. He couldn't take his eyes off her. And I think, so Princess Catherine's taken Melania, the First Lady, out into the gardens in Windsor, and they're going to be talking about nature and how nature's great for young children. And the Princess of Wales is going to talk about how nature was a great healer for her when she was going through her battle with cancer. But gosh, she has bounced back in such an enormous way. When we think about a year ago where we were with her to now and how incredible she looks, and she's beaming and she's happy, and I just think she is the most wonderful asset we have for this country. And if the late Queen could see now how her and the Prince of Wales, William, conducted themselves last night. And the most powerful man in the world, Donald Trump, is really, really, really fond of them. And he said he thinks the world of William, as well as his father, the King. So I'm hoping, you know, obviously, that when that time comes, when William does ascend to the throne, that special relationship between our two countries is able to continue. Yes, it really is. Seeing the Princess of Wales, she's just amazing.
GB News, the People's Channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Time is 4:49. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. I'm still joined in the studio by the Foreign Affairs analyst, James Marlowe. James, I wanted to get your take on what I think was an astonishing speech by Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, a short while ago. She referred to what she believes is a rising ethno-nationalism in the United Kingdom. She referred to the people on the United the Kingdom march a couple of weeks ago, led by, under the banner of a criminal, a former EDL founder. She talked about the chants on there. She said not everyone on that march was racist. Not everyone was coming out with racist chants, but some did. And she called them the heirs to the skinheads and the P-bashers of yesteryear. I won't ever mention that word. And she said, it seems to me, I am not valid. I think it was an incredible thing to say. She then said, we want a greater Britain, not a littler England. She called Nigel Farage racist. Everybody has at the conference so far. I'm assuming that Keir Starmer will follow suit tomorrow. She then said, I know what it feels like to be a Muslim post 9/11 or 7/7. If we're led to believe the narrative, it's of rising racism from the white people in the country, increasingly where it's a fearful place to be a Muslim. But I put it to you, there was not a single mention of the real racism in Britain, the rising hate of anti-Semitism. Didn't even get a mention. How does that make you feel?
Well, I think it's a great shame. It's clear that there is a major rise, a huge rise in this country and across Europe, actually, even in the United States, of the hatred towards Jewish people because they associate Jewish people, every single one of them, with Israel, which is right because originally Jewish people originally came from Israel, albeit 3,300 years ago, and they were dispersed all over the world. But yes, there is this rise, and it doesn't surprise me that the Home Secretary or anyone else, when they refer to the rise of hatred towards Muslims, that they would leave out Hindus and they would leave out Buddhas and they would leave out all the other ethnic minorities, including Jewish people. Doesn't surprise me. Jewish people are used to this. I mean, it's happening every single day. I walk down the street and people shout out along the A406 North Circular Road, baby killer. What? Genocide, stop killing the babies. What are you talking, me? What are you talking about? You know, they associate Jewish people with Israel, and that anyone who's associated with that must be involved with the war.
And yet, James Marlowe, you told me very movingly during the ad break about how the Jewish community in Golders Green have embraced the St George's flag, have embraced the Union flag, and we see it all the time. We see people flying the Jewish flag alongside the Union flag at marches where they're supporting Israel, but we never see the Union flag fly at the top of the Palestinian flag. And is this the point? The racism that dare not speak its name is anti-Semitism, because it doesn't fit the script of what Shabana Mahmood or the Labour Party are talking about.
Well, on the point about the flags, I just have to mention that because there is a very large Jewish community in parts of northwest London as well, and people have asked me within the community, because they figured I would know, they said, where's all these British flags come from? Where have all these English flags have come from? And a team put them up a few nights, actually it was about 2 weeks ago. It was on lampposts. They were pulled down. So what they did was they hired out a cherry picker, and they all chipped in £250 or something like that for the 24-hour period, and they put them much higher up. And then since that time, they came out another 4 or 5 nights ago, and they put in more and more. Every single lamppost have got them. So people have said, why? So I say, because at some demonstrations and in some areas, it's full of Palestinian flags, and if you put up a British flag over there, it gets torn down, and the council, the local council, will invoke that, will say, yes, because that's offensive to the local community. Well, here's a proof that you've got a Jewish community who are not offended by this at all, because they live in Great Britain. They live in the United Kingdom. They live in England, and that's their flag.
It's wonderful and beautiful to hear, and when they go low, literally the Jewish community goes higher with a cherry picker. James Marlowe, superb stuff. Thank you very much for coming and see us today in the studio. An absolute delight. It's now coming up with all the very latest from the White House as Donald Trump meets with Benjamin Netanyahu. You're with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News, Britain's News Channel. First out, it's time for your weather, and here's Aidan.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine day for most of us with some sunny spells, but increasingly damp in the far northwest, most notably Western Scotland, where we do have a weather front brushing past, and this weather front will increasingly bring wet weather to the northwest of the UK during the next few days. But for the time being, it's light and patchy outbreaks of rain for the west of Scotland, but also northern parts of Scotland, and overnight Northern Ireland seeing some splashes of rain. Elsewhere, mostly dry, clear spells continuing for central, southern and eastern parts of the UK, and with light winds. Temperatures falling away, mid to high single figures generally, and a few mist and fog patches, just like Monday morning, across the south of England. But towards the north, where it's a windier start to the day, a lot of cloud cover for Scotland. Those outbreaks of rain continuing to push into Orkney and Shetland, also sporadic outbreaks of rain for much of Scotland, northwest England, Northern Ireland. So on and off rain, mostly light, not particularly impactful at this stage. Wales seeing some cloud, 1 or 2 light showers, but for much of England, away from the northwest, it's a bright start once those mist and fog patches have cleared. Plenty of sunny spells for a time through the south and southeast, although the cloud will build into the afternoon. So for many places, it is a rather cloudy day, and that cloud will be thickest across northwestern parts of the UK. Again, a keen breeze and those outbreaks of rain on and off. Warm enough, though, in the southeast, 20 Celsius, more like mid to high teens further northwest, although eastern Scotland seeing the potential for 18 or 19 Celsius. Then it's all change as we go into Tuesday night, a deterioration as heavier rain pushes into Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. That's the start of a very wet spell for Western Scotland in particular midweek. Elsewhere, drier but breezy.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The M8 eastbound has lane 1 restricted between junctions 28 and 27 due to a broken down vehicle. An accident on the southbound M5 at junction 5 is disrupting the exit slip. In Hertfordshire, a collision on the M25 clockwise between junctions 24 and 25 has closed one lane. The A419 southbound near junctions with the A420 and A4259 in Swindon is partially closed due to a vehicle breakdown. And on the trains, there is major disruption between Luton and London St Pancras International, involving East Midlands Railway and across the Gatwick Express network. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
You could bank an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. And if that wasn't enough, you'll also get to drive away in this brand new motorhome. This brand new 2025 Burnham Primero could be yours. It comes with all the mod cons you'd expect from a vehicle worth over £74,000 and comfortably sleeps 4 people. This prize package is worth over £104,000. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News, anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News, broadcasting live across the UK, all the very latest news, debates and analysis all the way through until 6 p.m. And here's what's coming up on your show today.
The single greatest threat to our way of life and to the living standards of working people is the agenda of Nigel Farage and the Reform Party.
Live shots on your screen now of that Labour Party conference in Liverpool, where Labour's obsession with Reform UK continues. This time we just saw there the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, laying into Nigel Farage's party. David Lammy also did the same. As did the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. Will be live at the conference for all of the very latest of the attacks on Nigel Farage, no doubt. And meanwhile, live pictures on your screen. Inside there, the President's Donald Trump is hosting the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House for crucial talks over the war in Gaza, where Donald Trump just told reporters he is very hopeful of a solution, an end in sight for the war in Gaza. We'll bring you all the latest on this as it breaks. And meanwhile, Tyler Robinson, the suspect in the assassination of the Conservative commentator Charlie Kirk, is set to appear in court today. Any moment soon, we believe. He faces 7 counts, including aggravated murder, with Utah prosecutors seeking the death penalty. We'll be there for any updates, and that's all coming up live in your next hour. Well, the show's a pleasure to have your company. Well, Nigel Farage isn't at the Labour Party conference, and yet he's dominating the airwaves over the weekend, of course. The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, called his deportations policy racist. And the conversation was that, by inference, if you believe in that policy, if you support it, you're also racist. Today, Rachel Reeves called Nigel Farage racist. David Lammy called Nigel Farage's policies racist. And you've guessed it, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, followed up. Some say she pushed the rhetoric further, talking about the rise of ethno-nationalism in Britain, calling it racist and divisive. She talked about how she knew how it felt to be a Muslim in Britain post 9/11 and post 7/7, and talks about how it was reminiscent at the march of the 150,000. She said, I think it was more like 1 million, saying that it felt like some, not all of the people there, but some of the people there reminded her they were the heirs, she said, to the skinheads and the pea-bashers. I can't even say that phrase of yesterday. An astonishing speech, which many people are feeling is adding to the division, not helping with the healing in Britain. Get in touch, GBNews.com/your say is the way to do so. But now it's time for your headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and a very good evening to you. Just after 5 o'clock, the top story tonight, Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has unveiled tougher migration plans at the Labour Party conference this afternoon. She says migrants must now earn the right to live in the UK, with the wait for indefinite leave to remain doubling to 10 years. The changes could also hinge on tests like advanced English, clean criminal records and proof of contribution to local communities. It comes as Reform UK ahead in the polls vow to scrap the status altogether, a policy Sir Keir Starmer has branded racist. While addressing delegates today, Mahmood warned that they may not always like her decisions, but the border control is vital to keep Britain open, tolerant and generous.
The scale and the speed of change, as well as the nature of it, has frayed trust and eroded public confidence. Between 2021 and 2024, we saw over 2.6 million more people enter this country than leave it. And this included widespread abuse of Boris Johnson's health and social care visa, which saw 710,000 people arrive here. Far too many have been able to enter this country and disappear into the black economy.
Meanwhile, Rachel Reeves has warned of harsh global headwinds as she hinted at further tax rises in her conference speech today. The Chancellor said she would not take risks with the trust placed in the Labour Party, but admitted her choices are being made harder by wars, tariffs and rising borrowing costs. Experts say she may need to hike taxes or cut spending to fill an estimated £50 billion black hole. Her speech also pledged progress on Northern Powerhouse Rail, a library in every primary school and a youth guarantee for jobs.
I can announce that with that investment, we will fund a new youth guarantee. Every young person will be guaranteed either a place in college for those who want to continue their studies, or an apprenticeship to help them learn a trade vital to our plans to rebuild our country, or some one-to-one support to help them find a job. But more than that, our guarantee means that any young person out of work, education or training for more than 18 months will be given a paid work placement.
Donald Trump has said he is very confident of striking peace in Gaza as he welcomes Benjamin Netanyahu to the White House. It's the Israeli leader's fourth visit since Trump's return to office, with talks focusing on the war and the release of hostages.
President Trump, are you confident, sir, there'll be peace in Gaza anytime soon? And the 21-point plan, is everyone on board?
Well, as we saw and heard there, met with a handshake from Trump, it was a warmer welcome than Netanyahu's UN speech just days earlier when dozens of delegates walked out. He's since attacked what he calls a great disgraceful decision by Britain, France, Canada and others to recognise Palestinian statehood. 3 migrants, a teenager and 2 women from Somalia, have died attempting to cross the Channel in small boats over the weekend. A record 33,000 people have now arrived this year so far, with nearly 1,300 reaching the UK in 19 boats on Saturday and Sunday alone. Today, a large black dinghy was spotted taking an unusual route far west of Calais, escorted by French vessels. And Jaguar Land Rover says it plans to restart some manufacturing in the coming days after a major cyber attack shut down production earlier this month. The car maker says a controlled, phased restart is now underway, with parts of its operation returning. All manufacturing had been paused since the start of September after hackers targeted the company. JLR has admitted much more work still needs to be done, but insists recovery is firmly underway. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you shortly. Now, though, it's over to Martin.
Thank you, Sam. Now, as well as all the drama at the Labour Party conference, Shabana Mahmood calling about the rise of ethno-nationalism in Britain, calling Nigel Farage's party racist. Rachel Reeves saying the single biggest threat to the United Kingdom is Reform UK, is Nigel Farage, and the Prime Minister due to speak tomorrow, no doubt doubling down on that after calling Nigel Farage's policies racist at the weekend. An astonishing situation in domestic politics, but of course politics around the world is rolling on too. Donald Trump is currently meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House. And upon arriving at the White House, Donald Trump says he was very confident of peace in Gaza. Let's take a listen.
President Trump, are you confident, sir, there'll be peace in Gaza anytime soon? And the 21-point plan, is everyone on board?
Of course, top of the agenda is the war in Gaza. Will it be coming to an end anytime soon? Well, if you listen to the fighting talk that Benjamin Netanyahu delivered at the United Nations last week, he's clearly in no mood for backing down. Now, we have some live pictures, I believe, of a protest outside the White House, a pro-Palestine protest. But Netanyahu last week at the UN saying, we've hammered the Houthis, we crushed the bulk of Hamas's terror machine, we crippled Hezbollah, taken out most of its leaders and much of its weapons arsenal. This is the man who's not in the mood for peace talks anytime soon. It seems to me he wants to get the job done. Well, my next guest is the Defence and the Foreign Affairs editor at The Telegraph, Con Coughlin. Con, welcome to the show. A pleasure to have your company. We heard there at least that Donald Trump said he's very confident of reaching a resolution. What do you think that's going to look like?
Well, they have this 21-point peace plan that surfaced over the weekend. Apparently, Trump has discussed this with Arab leaders at the UN last week, and there is this sort of consensus building for a ceasefire. And all the indications from the White House is that Trump is going to sort of try and pressure Netanyahu into accepting it. But as you said in your introduction, given what Netanyahu said at the UN last week, he doesn't seem to be in much of a mood for compromise. And let's not forget that Israel is maintaining its military offensive, and Netanyahu says he's not going to rest until Hamas is destroyed. So, you know, there's a lot of talking to be had at the White House today.
I want to talk to you, if I could, about Britain's involvement, such as it is in this, certainly its rhetoric. David Lammy at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool a short while ago, after he'd thanked Angela Rayner, who's a working-class hero, apparently, £40,000 of unpaid stamp duty. I don't know if that's the act of a hero. I digress. The number one issue that came to his lips was Palestine, you know, that issue that's so keen to the working classes of Britain. I think about 18% of the working classes even care about this issue. I digress. He said, I honoured my commitment to recognise the state of Palestine to the Prime Minister of Palestine when in opposition. This is a difference a Labour government makes. Do you think that the talk that the Labour Party has rewarded terrorism by recognising the state of Palestine carries any water?
I think it does. And frankly, you know, the reason David Lammy is no longer Foreign Secretary is partly because of his conduct towards Israel and the whole Gaza issue when he was in office. You'll recall that he supported prosecuting Netanyahu for war crimes. He imposed arms bans on trade to Israel, and of course was the driving force behind the British government's, you know, rather naive decision, in my view, to recognise a Palestinian state when no such state exists. So, you know, but he's pandering to the Labour left. We know that Starmer's in trouble, coming back to the domestic political discussion. And when Lammy gets up at the Labour Party conference and starts talking about his wonderful track record on the Palestine issue, he's clearly playing to the left and looking perhaps for his own challenge at the leadership. Who knows?
Yeah, I think maybe you've got a good point there. Thanks for joining us. We'll have to leave it there. That's the Defence and the Foreign Affairs editor at The Telegraph, Con Coughlin. Always a pleasure to have your company. Let's now speak with the former Army officer, Patrick Burnham Crosswell. Patrick, always a delight to have your company. Just echoing the sentiment there that Benjamin Netanyahu seems in no mood for peace talks with Hamas anytime soon. What are you expecting to come out of today's meeting at the White House?
I think everyone's going to grasp a bit of reality. The reality is that for President Netanyahu and the Israeli state is simple. They want the right to exist, and that means they need their hostages back, dead or alive, and they need Hamas to disarm and stop lobbing rockets at them. Any solution that includes that is viable. Any solution that doesn't isn't, for the very simple reason that, contrary to what a lot of people like me thought, the Israelis' defence forces have done the almost impossible and gone through Gaza and virtually destroyed Hamas as it was. And they've destroyed its infrastructure. And we've all seen the pictures of the tunnels buried under the hospitals. Yes, they've killed a few people doing it. I actually looked at the numbers and compared them to the WikiLeaks stuff on Iraq. And it's a terrible phrase, but, 40,000, 60,000, 65,000 dead Palestinians, say 20,000 were actually Hamas people engaged in fighting, which seems to be about the right sort of number, then they've killed 2 civilians for every Hamas fighter they killed, which is pretty much identical to what the US and the Allies did in the occupation of Iraq.
And I believe we do have some live pictures of protests now. We can get those on our screen. Protests outside the White House, a substantial amount of people. And I wonder, Patrick Burnham Crosswell, if people, it's only 10 days from now, it'll be the 2nd anniversary of the Hamas terrorist invasion of Israel, where 1,400, 1,200, depends on which figures you believe, were massacred, murdered, brutalised, raped, tortured, set fire to, hostages taken, seems to have been forgotten. Seems to have been largely forgotten by the protests, and may I say, by diplomats recognising the state of Palestine. They seem to have failed to recognise the true, lasting horror of the worst attack on the Jewish community since the Holocaust.
Absolutely. I mean, the one person who hasn't forgotten that is Prime Minister Netanyahu, and indeed, most of the population of Israel, and that's front and centre of their thinking. But beyond that, obviously they prefer a ceasefire because no soldier likes doing urban combat. It's hard, it's dangerous, it's sweaty, and you end up inadvertently killing people you didn't mean to kill. But if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. The alternative is no state of Israel, and that's never going to happen. I suspect that President Trump is well aware of these red lines and will find some way of bringing it together and pointing out the reality to, should I say, the deluded lefties like David Lammy and our illustrious Prime Minister.
OK, we have to leave it there. Thanks for your forthright opinions. Former Army officer Patrick Burnham Crosswell. Well, protests have been taking place outside the White House. We can now speak with GB News' presenter, Bev Turner. Bev, an absolute pleasure to have your company over the pond there. We're seeing the people behind you protesting. Benjamin Netanyahu won't give a toot cahoot about what they're saying. It seems to me he's there to get the job done. And Donald Trump is in the very, very same mood. He wants the war to end in Gaza, but it won't be about capitulating to Hamas.
Hi, Martin. Yeah, that's right. The protests behind me, interestingly, are Jewish people. The people you can see behind me are Jewish people. I've just spoken to one senior rabbi, and we will play that interview out on the Late Show Live tonight. And they are saying this needs to be an agreement between both sides. Donald Trump is inside the White House right now with Benjamin Netanyahu. Donald Trump has a 21-point plan. The details of that are a little vague at the moment. They're expected to include a disarmament of Hamas. Huge amount riding on this, of course, today, Martin, because this has gone on for much longer than Donald Trump wanted. As we know, when he came into office, he was extremely confident that he could end not only the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, but also the conflict in the Middle East, and that has proven to be beyond his capabilities so far. The word from within the White House is that patience is running very, very thin with Benjamin Netanyahu to come to a peaceful solution. We all saw the pictures from the UN General Assembly in New York over the weekend, where the leaders of the other countries simply stood up and walked out when Netanyahu took to the stage. So let's wait and see what happens today. They're having lunch in that building behind me as we speak. We expect a press conference in a couple of hours' time, and we will see from that point, can Donald Trump achieve his aim of wanting to bring peace into the Middle East? What is Netanyahu happy to concede? What will Hamas agree to? Everything could be, Martin, decided this afternoon.
Bev Turner, always a pleasure to have your company. Of course, tune into the Late Show live from 12 exclusively on GB News for Bev's take on what's happening that side of the pond. Bev, always an absolute pleasure. You legend. Now it's time now for our latest Great British giveaway, and it's your chance to win a brand new four-berth motorhome worth over £74,000 plus a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash. And here's Hayley Sparks with all the details.
It's our biggest, greatest Great British giveaway to date. Your chance to win a prize package worth over £104,000. You could be driving away with this brand new Burnham Primero motorhome. With thanks to Marquis Leisure, this four-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas, sky view roof light, and has all the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure any adventures in your motorhome are taken in style.
For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. The winner will be contacted live on GB News, week commencing 10th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck, and coming up, we'll be discussing the Labour Party's obsession with Reform UK, which continues, this time with the Chancellor laying into Nigel Farage's party. David Lammy also did the same, as did the Home Secretary, talking about the rise of ethno-nationalism in the United Kingdom. Public enemy number one, the man who's not even there, Nigel Farage. That's next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel. At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're
the failure is...
deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Time is 5:23 with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. Now, earlier today, the Home Secretary outlined her party's new plans for cracking down on migration numbers. Let's take a listen.
The scale and the speed of change, as well as the nature of it, has frayed trust and eroded public confidence. Between 2021 and 2024, we saw over 2.6 million more people enter this country than leave it. And this included widespread abuse of Boris Johnson's health and social care visa, which saw 710,000 people arrive here. Far too many have been able to enter this country and disappear into the black economy.
And that was Shabana Mahmood about an hour ago, blaming the Conservatives, obviously, for the huge spike in immigration. But that's complete forgetting. About 2 days ago, the ONS released data, the second biggest increase in British population ever. 755,000 happened under Labour Party's watch. We had the Boris wave. Is this the Keir wave? Stop blaming other parties, and how about controlling our borders? Let's speak now with political commentator Jack Anderton, who wrote a very moving piece about how this is all impacting young people at the weekend. Jack, a pleasure to have your company. May I say, I think you're blossoming into a very, very erudite and emotional young commentator on this, and that's why I got you on the show today, because young people have paid a huge price in all of this, because importing lots of unskilled labour, importing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of students is meaning less job opportunities for young people, it's meaning higher property prices, and it means that young people, frankly, have been shafted.
Yes, that's exactly right. If you look at between 2022 and 2024, more than 3 million people came to this country. And if you look at how many houses we built, how many jobs have been created, we cannot sustain the pace. And my article in the Mail today was about that very point, which is that mass migration is harming young people, I would argue, the most. You look at the university graduates, they are competing with the 750,000 international students that are also studying at British universities. So when they graduate and when they get their degree, they are competing for the very same jobs as those 750,000 international students. And there simply just aren't enough jobs. So if you compare the last 2 years, British graduates are applying for more than double the jobs until they actually receive a letter of a job offer than they would be 2 years ago. So they're applying for more jobs, even though there are less opportunities.
But presumably, Jack Anderton, that makes you a racist to complain about all of this. I mean, everybody who complains about rising immigration, be it young people, be it old people. The Prime Minister said at the weekend to want to clamp down on these kind of policies. That makes you a racist. The Home Secretary today talks of a rising tide of ethno-nationalism. Again, pointing out the country's becoming racist, like the 1970s. She talks about the skinheads and the pea-bashers. Can't even bring myself to say it. And the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, echoed the sentiment, saying the biggest problem this country faces is Nigel Farage. And the concerns of people like yourself seem to be completely thrown under the bus.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. And I would push back on that point. It's not about race, it's actually about contribution, and it's about putting our own people and our own young people first. And that was entirely the point of my article. The British economy and the British state and Britain as a country does not exist to provide jobs for international students or foreign workers. It exists to provide jobs for British people, and it should put British people first.
And Jack, you mentioned some incredible statistics in your piece. Now, 56% of foreign students stay in the UK versus just 19% back in 2019. So clearly the universities are rolling out the red carpet because, of course, they pay far higher fees. Boris Johnson's government, Kemi Badenoch herself, said we need more foreign students. Great Britain PLC is having its revenue boosted. But then they stick around and they're going for graduate jobs, and British graduates like yourself find yourself pinched out the job market.
Well, that's exactly the point. And as I said, you've got 750,000 of those international students. And actually what we're seeing is that people are coming on student visas, graduating, and then actually working in sort of lower paid sectors. So, for example, care workers. Now, you might say, oh, well, actually, we need people to come and work as care workers. But what I would argue is that by importing hundreds of thousands of people to come and do those jobs, what we are seeing is that wages are being suppressed, which is why you have seen in Britain for the last 15 years, wages have been stagnant since 2008. And it is because we are importing hundreds of thousands, millions of foreign workers who are willing to work for cheaper than British workers.
Jack Anderton, I'll give you my little story, which I think perfectly illustrates it. I graduated with a diploma in journalism, postgraduate diploma in 1994. My starting salary was £25,000. A starting salary now in journalism is about £25,000. It's a pound for pound likeness minus 30 years of inflation. 30 years ago, you could buy a house in London for £95,000. Now you'd be looking to get change from $500,000. The point is we have an oversupply of people competing for graduate jobs. We have an undersupply of housing. We have an oversupply of people coming in from overseas to get that housing, and young people are being absolutely caught in the crossfire of the perfect storm.
That's exactly the point. As you've just explained, it's a simple concept of supply and demand. If there is a lack of housing, yet there is a higher demand, then the cost of housing goes up, and the same as with jobs. If there is a lack of supply of good, well-paying jobs, and the demand is going up, well, then actually employers can actually pay less than they would perhaps need to if it wasn't for the millions of people that we've imported. But I would also touch on that actually the value of a degree has been degraded over the last sort of 30 years partly through this mass migration. And actually, students were pushed to go to university and pushed to get into student debt because they were promised if they were given a degree, if they earned a degree, they would be able to get a well-paying job. And actually, that isn't the case. The social contract and what young people were promised has actually been broken.
And I think some of the data in your piece here is that in actual fact, 1 in 4 jobs advertised to graduates pay the minimum wage or slightly above. Sold the dream, perhaps the illusion of a 50 grand debt being a golden ticket to the future. And the reality is perhaps education turned out to be a lie.
I think that's right. And I think what a lot of young people are feeling is that they were sold a lie, and that they've gotten, more than £50,000 in debt at the end of the 3 years of their university course. And actually, they've come out poorer than when they went in. It's exactly as you said. It's a false promise that they were told, and quite frankly, the British economy is not working for the British youth.
Thank you, Jack Anderton. A superb piece, very thought-provoking. I wonder actually this will precipitate itself in a youth rebellion vote against the big parties. We'll have to wait and see. Jack Anderton, thank you very much for joining us on the show. A pleasure to have your company, and please do come back. Plenty more to come throughout the rest of the show, but for now, if you're travelling home from work or from school, first of all, stay safe as ever. Here's your traffic and your travel update, and please stick with us.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The A82 in Luss is restricted due to a collision. Approach cautiously. On the M5 southbound at Junction 5 in Worcestershire, there's an accident with one lane closed. The A14 westbound in Cambridgeshire has a broken down vehicle, causing delays between Junction 36A11 and Junction 35 Stoke-cum-Quay with one lane closed. The A419 southbound in Swindon has a broken down vehicle causing delays. In Southampton, the M27 eastbound has a broken down vehicle with one lane closed. On the trains, East Midlands Railway reports major disruptions between Luton and London St Pancras International. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back, 5:32. The top story tonight, Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has unveiled tougher migration plans. The wait for indefinite leave to remain will double to 10 years, with stricter tests on English, criminal records and community contributions. She's warned delegates they may not always like her decisions, but insisted strong borders keep Britain open, tolerant and generous. In the US, Donald Trump has said he is very confident of striking peace in Gaza as he welcomed Benjamin Netanyahu to the White House. The US president's expected to push a new peace plan to end the Israel-Gaza war during their talks today, but Netanyahu says nothing has been finalized yet.
President Trump, are you confident, sir, there'll be peace in Gaza anytime soon? And the 21-point plan, is everyone on board?
Jaguar Land Rover says production will restart in the coming days after a crippling cyber attack. The car maker calls it a controlled and phased restart, but warns there is still a lot more to do. Met police officers could soon be asked to declare if they're Freemasons. A new consultation will decide if the group should join the list of declarable associations, amid questions over its impact on investigations and promotions. And rail passengers in Yorkshire can now buy their tickets with phones simply being tracked. The new app checks you in at the station and then uses GPS to log when you finish your journey. Those are the headlines, plenty more still to come right here with GB News.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine day for most of us with some sunny spells, but increasingly damp in the far northwest, most notably Western Scotland, where we do have a weather front brushing past, and this weather front will increasingly bring wet weather to the northwest of the UK during the next few days. But for the time being, it's light and patchy outbreaks of rain for the west of Scotland, but also northern parts of Scotland, and overnight Northern Ireland seeing some splashes of rain. Elsewhere, mostly dry, clear spells continuing for central, southern and eastern parts of the UK, and with light winds. Temperatures falling away, mid to high single figures generally, and a few mist and fog patches, just like Monday morning, across the south of England. But towards the north, where it's a windier start to the day, a lot of cloud cover for Scotland. Those outbreaks of rain continuing to push into Orkney and Shetland, also sporadic outbreaks of rain for much of Scotland, northwest England, Northern Ireland. So on and off rain, mostly light, not particularly impactful at this stage. Wales seeing some cloud, 1 or 2 light showers, but for much of England, away from the northwest, it's a bright start once those mist and fog patches have cleared. Plenty of sunny spells for a time through the south and southeast, although the cloud will build into the afternoon. So for many places, it is a rather cloudy day, and that cloud will be thickest across northwestern parts of the UK. Again, a keen breeze and those outbreaks of rain on and off. Warm enough though in the southeast, 20 Celsius, more like mid to high teens further northwest, although eastern Scotland seeing the potential for 18 or 19 Celsius. Then it's all change as we go into Tuesday night, a deterioration as heavier rain pushes into Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. That's the start of a very wet spell for Western Scotland in particular midweek. Elsewhere, drier but breezy.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:39. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, has agreed to spend £66 million of taxpayers' money on cultural projects over the next 3 years. Now, some of the projects include Gypsy, Roma and Traveller History Month, along with a series of LGBTQ plus events. Now, is this more woke waste that nobody asked for? Or is this necessary spending in the name of diversity? Let's speak now with the leader of the London Conservatives in the Assembly, Susan Hall. Susan Hall, always a pleasure to have your company. Thanks for joining us on the show today. Before we talk about Sadiq Khan, Sir Sadiq, perhaps we should call him now, can I get some reaction from you about the Labour Party conference, in particular Sir Keir Starmer over the weekend saying that Nigel Farage's policies were racist? We've heard Rachel Reeves repeat today she thinks that this is all racist. David Lammy said it was racist, and Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, went a stage further and claims she believes we're seeing a rise of ethno-nationalism in the United Kingdom. Why did the Labour Party call everybody who disagrees with them racist?
Because they've done it for years and they've got away with it for years. And of course, now they're suddenly realising they're not going to get away with it anymore because we're all fed up with it and we all just ignore it now. The term racist is just ignored because it's used so much by them. Sadiq Khan has always done that. During the mayoral race between me and him, he constantly referred to me as a racist, far right, because he knew, I mean, only 18 months ago, Martin, that was something you just recoiled from. And it was his way of putting you back in a box. Now, because they're doing it all the time to everybody, people are saying, hang on a minute, this is ridiculous. And the one thing I did pick up today was Yvette Cooper referring to plastic patriots. How dare she? How dare she speak to those of us on the right that are proud of our flag, proud of our monarchy, etc., refer to us all as plastic patriots. They're a disgrace, Labour are an utter disgrace.
What struck me as well earlier on today was Shabana Mahmood was talking about a new progressive patriotism as the only acceptable form of patriotism, a patriotism where we all unite under the flag and put aside our differences. And yet what's striking me is incredible, Susan Hall, is that the policies of Nigel Farage, the policies increasingly of the Conservative Party to detain, to deport, to limit numbers, to make sure people speak useful English, to not allow them to have criminal records, are now the Labour Party policy. Presumably then they're not racist.
Oh, no, it's not racist if it's done by the left, if it's done in the name of progressive. And they all like to think they're very, very nice people, and therefore everything they do is nice and it's kind and all the rest of it. And any of us on the right are anything but nice and kind. And if we wave a flag, it's racist. If they refer to the flag, it's being patriotic. Well, the British public have woken up to this. They can see this is a load of nonsense. And actually, how long they'll put up with it, the public, I don't know. But if you look at the Labour conference, they've spent their whole time talking about other parties, particularly Reform. Just tell us what you stand for, Zakir, because I don't know. And I mean, I watch the news all the time and I'm passionate about politics, but I don't know what Labour stand for. I don't think anybody else does. So they should just stand there and tell us what they're going to do, not have a constant go about what the Conservatives did before, what Reform are and how they're racist and plastic patriots. It's so irritating, but I'm afraid Sadiq Khan has done this for the last 9 years.
Yeah, let's talk about his two latest ventures. One is a misinformation campaign aiming to point out the fact he claims that people constantly trying to talk down London across the globe are spreading misinformation about crime and safety in the capital. He points out that actually there's been a drop of nearly 12% in crimes that involve people being hurt in Britain. Presumably people like yourself, Susan Hall, are spreading misinformation.
Yes, bless him. He will pick a figure that looks good, but he won't tell you that gun crime has increased by 8.8%. Sexual offences are up 9.6%. I mean, drug trafficking has gone up by 98.4%. So he'll omit to tell you anything like that. We only have to go on social media and see lads in the streets with knives trying to hack each other to pieces. I mean, some of the figures will move. But, you know, he won't mention the ones that don't. What this is doing to actually get tourism going, God only knows. The number of people that have left our city that are really wealthy because they just don't want their family near what they see openly in the streets as fighting. We never used to have this, Martin. We never used to see all this.
But Susan Hall, don't worry, fret ye not. The Mayor of London is about to spend £66 million on projects for the Gypsy, the Roma, the traveller community. And there's even an event called Black on the Square in Trafalgar Square. Don't worry, a few festivals will right all of these wrongs.
Well, you know what I think about that. I would be putting any money into policing because the one thing that you are responsible for, if you are the Mayor of London, if you are so lucky to have that job, is you must keep Londoners safe. And I'm afraid he is not doing that at the moment. He's happy to go to these events that he pays for, well, rather, we all pay for as taxpayers, have his picture taken, everybody say how wonderful you are because they go to all these things for free. Well, again, it isn't free because we're paying, us taxpayers are paying. Most of us taxpayers would actually much rather we were kept safe and our families were kept safe. That money should be going into the Metropolitan Police. They're £260 million short.
OK, Susan Hall, thank you very much for joining us. I'm lovely to see that St George's flag there flying behind you. Susan Hall, always an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for your company.
Thank you.
Now, speaking recently, Sir Sadiq Khan has said this. We've seen a number of politicians here and across the globe talking down London and spreading misinformation about crime and safety in the capital. The evidence is clear. Our approach to tackling crime and its complex causes works. It's driving down violence right across the capital. Now, according to the Mayor's office, overall homicides in London are at a 10-year low, and the city's rate is lower than in Berlin, Brussels, Madrid, Paris, and all major US cities. The rate of homicide was down by 17% in the 12-month period to June this year, compared with the 12-month period to May 2016, the Mayor's office has previously said. Now, if you're in search of some holiday sun, then here's the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
There's still plenty of fine and warm weather across most of the Mediterranean, but it's a different story across parts of Spain, and in particular parts of southeast Spain and the Balearic Islands, where we're going to see some particularly heavy and persistent rain through the day on Tuesday. Flooding is possible in places and warnings are in place as well. Scattered showers across parts of Italy, the Balkans and Greece, but many places staying dry with some sunny spells. And through the next few days, it stays largely fine with a mixture of sunny spells and cloud and temperatures around average.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Is he the last great film star? Is that a silly thing to say?
No, it is. There is one more.
Of course.
Clint. I mean, absolute genius as a director and
He's in the Well, Clint is like him, you know, great actor,
correct, yeah.
Incredibly good looking.
He was so good looking for so long.
Yeah.
And you can see how it was a huge advantage initially and maybe a bit of a disadvantage as he got older.
Do you think so?
Yeah, because he was good looking. No, he was an actor as well. He was a director as well. That's why he changed and founded the Sundance Film Festival and whatever to show that he could bring forward projects.
And of course named after one of his most famous characters,
yeah.
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Yeah.
For you, when you think of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, what do you think of?
Oh, I think the jumping off the
That's it.
The cliff into the water. I
they
can't
both
swim.
stand there, and it's like, well, and then he goes, I can't swim.
Yeah.
And he said, well, then he starts laughing. He goes, well, the fall's probably going to kill you anyway.
Yeah.
So then they just hold hands and then they run out.
But he was great into those films. When you look at those films in the 70s, like All the President's Men, I mean, just...
What a great film that is. Him and Dustin Hoffman.
That inspired
Woodward
me.
and Bernstein.
That inspired me to
really?
To become a journalist, yeah. And I actually talked to the kids in here about how in that film they pick up and they say and they typewriters and they use the phone, and it's not the way it is today, the way you send an email or a text or whatever it is. You get an answer from someone. You speak to them on the phone and they confirm something and you've got that detail. Whereas today they all wait for emails to be responded to and whatever.
See, the thing is, what you've got to do, though, surely, is loosen the tie, shirt undone, feet up on the desk with about 6 phones. Get me Deep Throat on the phone right now.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 6 with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. Now, plans by Sir Keir Starmer to roll out mandatory digital ID cards for UK workers have been met with widespread backlash from across the country. And now we can report that over 2.5 million people have signed the petition against their introduction. Now, an exclusive polling seen exclusively by GB News, courtesy of our friends at Electoral Calculus, proves that the opposition is across the political and the age divide. Let's now speak with the CEO of Electoral Calculus, Martin Baxter. Martin Baxter, always a pleasure to have your company. Thank you very much for sharing this exclusive data with us. Let's start with the fascinating political backlash against this. And Martin Baxter, we can see there's wide support from the traditional parties, but the newer parties are rejecting it.
Yes, that's interesting. So this poll that we've done with our partners Find Out Now, we did the sample on Friday, about 1,000 people, and excluding the don't knows, we found 46% of people against the digital ID cards and only 27% in favour, with the rest in the middle. There we go, we got the graphs there. But it's not a left-right divide, as you were saying. That interestingly, both Labour and Conservative voters, by a small margin, support the plan. But Reform voters, Liberal Democrats and Greens, are all against by quite heavy margins. Reform voters particularly against. But if Keir Starmer's aim is to get maybe some Reform voters back to Labour and persuade Lib Dems and Greens to support him, this is actually not the sort of policy that's going to do it. Those voters, the key ones he's trying to attract, are repelled by this policy. So it just goes to show politics is sometimes a bit more complicated than you expected. We thought it might have been a straight left-right split, but it isn't. It's more complicated than that. The old centre parties are for it, they're quite evenly balanced, and others are against.
Martin, the age split, to me, is absolutely fascinating. We're led to believe this is old duffers who don't like change. In actual fact, the rebellion is being led by the younger voters, and perhaps, Martin Baxter, that's because they remember the pain that lockdowns caused them.
Isn't that interesting? Yes. So we see that amongst the age 18 to 39s, over 50% oppose and fewer than 20% support. But all age groups are opposed, but the younger generation more opposed than anybody else. So again, quite interesting findings that maybe we wouldn't have expected. But as you say, it may be to do with lockdown or other attitudes amongst the young. But it's neither the young nor supporters of other parties are really groups that Labour should be trying to reject at the moment. So it's excuse me.
Martin, as you say, what's fascinating about this, Martin, is that the Labour Party is putting itself out there as it wants to lower the age that you're eligible to vote, and they thought that was a shoo-in. That could backfire because Jeremy Corbyn's party, the Greens, Nigel Farage's party, seem to be attracting a lot of younger people, and precisely this kind of policy is repelling young people.
Yes, I mean, the trouble with being the establishment party, which Labour to some extent now is, in some ways it's good. It means you get lots of the establishment behind you. But younger people are always looking for something to rebel against, and Labour could be that something. So it's Labour can't take the youth vote for guaranteed, I'd say.
Beautiful stuff, Martin Baxter. Always a pleasure. Thank you for your company as ever. Now, somebody who appeals to young, old and everybody else alike in between, of course, is Michelle Jubilee. The queen of primetime debate is up next. Jubes, what's on your menu?
Martin, thank you very much for that. Good show, as always. Well, of course, I do want to unpick some of the goings-on at the Labour Party conference today. Also, some of the words spoken by the Home Secretary to describe some of the people that attended that Unite the Kingdom march. I want to examine that as well in this world where language really does matter. And, of course, you've got Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu having a huge meeting tonight. Huge significance, that one. All of that in a minute.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine day for most of us with some sunny spells, but increasingly damp in the far northwest, most notably Western Scotland, where we do have a weather front brushing past, and this weather front will increasingly bring wet weather to the northwest of the UK during the next few days. But for the time being, it's light and patchy outbreaks of rain for the west of Scotland, but also northern parts of Scotland, and overnight Northern Ireland seeing some splashes of rain. Elsewhere, mostly dry, clear spells continuing for central, southern and eastern parts of the UK, and with light winds. Temperatures falling away, mid to high single figures generally, and a few mist and fog patches, just like Monday morning, across the south of England. But towards the north, where it's a windier start to the day, a lot of cloud cover for Scotland. Those outbreaks of rain continuing to push into Orkney and Shetland, also sporadic outbreaks of rain for much of Scotland, northwest England, Northern Ireland. So on and off rain, mostly light, not particularly impactful at this stage. Wales seeing some cloud, 1 or 2 light showers, but for much of England, away from the northwest, it's a bright start once those mist and fog patches have cleared. Plenty of sunny spells for a time through the south and southeast, although the cloud will build into the afternoon. So for many places, it is a rather cloudy day, and that cloud will be thickest across northwestern parts of the UK. Again, a keen breeze and those outbreaks of rain on and off. Warm enough, though, in the southeast, 20 Celsius, more like mid to high teens further northwest, although eastern Scotland seeing the potential for 18 or 19 Celsius. Then it's all change as we go into Tuesday night, a deterioration as heavier rain pushes into Northern Ireland and western Scotland. That's the start of a very wet spell for western Scotland in particular midweek. Elsewhere, drier but breezy.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Drivers on the A9 at Inveralmond roundabout should proceed with caution due to a broken down vehicle. On the M27 eastbound between junctions 5 and 7, a lane closure from another vehicle breakdown is causing disruption. The A14 eastbound in Cambridgeshire faces congestion with one lane closed, adding delay. The A419 southbound towards Swindon between junctions with the A420 and the A4259 is experiencing delays from a lane closure. And on the trains, East Midlands Railway is reporting major disruption between Luton and London St Pancras. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
It's our biggest Great British giveaway to date. You could be driving away with this brand new Burnham Primera motorhome. This 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas and has all of the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000